There's something very weird about the ticking of a clock, right? There's a few people that really like it, and others just can't seem to stand it. And I'm of like the latter variety. I don't have that much of a problem with it, but secretary wanted like an analog clock in our kitchen, and I put my foot down and said no, because I don't need that while I'm eating, to be honest. It feels like the end getting ever so close with every single tick-tock, tick-tock. And that's exactly it. The end does come closer with every single tick-tock. We load. Our save game in the spell. And I thought about... It's very weird, right? The logo. I thought about the spell. I thought about this game, actually, and that's a good sign. If I can't wait to keep reading a game, a visual novel, that means that it's a good one. Or at least interesting. And I thought about, and I don't know if I mentioned this last time, every time he puts his hand on her head to not even pet her, but to just give her this gentle pressure, this weight on top of her head, is he conditioning her? Is he manipulating her when he does that? Is he trying to instill positive emotions when he does that every time he does that, so he can bend her or something? Why, you don't like reminders of your mortality? No, I love a good stroll over like a cemetery, okay? I love that. But the ticking of the clock, it's not even like the time thing that bothers me. It's the constant noise, I think. Sometimes I might just need silence or something. I grew up with a ticking clock near to my bed, so it's relaxing for me. Yeah, the rhythm, the constant noise, it's like, it really does it for some people, especially children. Apparently they love it because of the heartbeat they hear like in the belly and stuff. But fuck me, I just don't like it. The only constant noise I want to endure is my own voice, and even that is like grating at times. Of course it's mind control. Yeah, where did we leave off? Like, oh yeah, she had like an argument with a friend. She was not happy right until she entered Steve's car. She'd been pouting about the conversation she had with Emily earlier, and she will probably be even less happy the moment Steve tells her about his new job, or so she thought. What, you didn't get a job? Despite being the one forcing him to find a job in the first place, she sounded rather happy. No, but that was a good pretext to further my agenda. Ooh. A pretext? Don't you want to know about his agenda, rather? She was apprehensive of what he meant by that. Also, it seems she knows what his agenda is. The teacher, you know, the one we met at the supermarket earlier this week? I met her. She'll be babysitting you for an hour today. Oh god, that must be... That's like the ultimate insult. What? In my butt? She couldn't believe her ears. Everything in that sentence was preposterous. A babysitter? She's been babysitting herself since she was 8. And by Miss Roxanne on top of that? She didn't like her. She didn't want to be alone with her. She's a liar. Wait, he's a liar. You got things mixed up. But why and when and just why? Because I need to go somewhere. It's at 5:30. Because I need to go somewhere. What? Oh, he answered the white voice because she asked the white. Okay, that's a good. Oh god, I love that. She asked white rice, and he answered white rice as well. Oh my god, this guy, he's literally blue. I can take care of myself. You said you were scared of being alone in the apartment, though. Ah, then let me come with you. You can. She needs to be with you, because I'll initiate the mating... What now? The mating process by finding her a gift. Give me a quick second. My sound levels are too high again. Like, it happens every time I do something by myself. I need it a little bit louder. When I'm streaming, it's just too much for my ears. Because of the headphones. Here we go. Every time I see the name Steven in a visual novel, I suffer mood whiplash, like something that doesn't belong. Yeah, it's very clearly taking place in the English world, right? Imagine my shock with the name of the protagonist in like Sweetest Monster though. Jesus Christ. What he just said was really, really creepy, she thought. She no longer joked at the possibility of him being a robot. She was scared that it actually was the case. What does it even mean? Well, you don't know, but the mate... Oh god, he's gonna explain. I won't be long. Do it for me, alright? It's the first time he actually asked her for anything, so of course she's going to say, alright. This is the power of real autism, yeah. Also, look at this. Oh, look at his skirt. Steve said you were not feeling very well, and he didn't want to leave you alone while he was going away, so that's why he asked me to look after you. He's really worried about you. You must be very happy. You must be happy to have someone like him looking out for you. Yeah, very much so. Roxanne took a single step inside the apartment, and there she was, already smiling excessively, trying to be friendly. That was one of the many things Eloise didn't like about her. People who always smile seem to be hiding something, or so she thought. I'll be going then. I've already prepared dinner, so please help yourself. And thank you again for listening to my selfish request. Steve was smiling at Roxanne, his eyes closed, just like a saint. No one does that. No one smiles with their eyes closed, except for like anime people. No, it's nothing. Like, why would you write that then? Because it makes no sense in the real world. No, it's nothing. She was one of my students, so it's the least I can do. And you didn't have to prepare dinner for us. I would have handled myself just fine. I'm sure you would. Now if you'll excuse me, and sweetheart. He looked at Eloise, his eyes returning to their lifeless state, if but for a second. Stay strong, alright? She didn't know in what sense he meant those words. Probably tried to survive for an hour with that witch. Or at least that's what she wished he meant. He left coldly. The two girls looked at each other awkwardly. Finally, Miss Roxanne exclaimed, Alright, listen here, little shit. Let's eat. They sat, one in front of the other. To think Steve would have a thing for Miss Roxanne. Eloise only hoped it was not reciprocated. That's good, very good. I'm genuinely impressed, Miss Roxanne said, taking the first bite of the meal set out before her. A great cook, that's the kind of man I would fall for. Hee. Ugh. The future looked grim for Eloise. Now she had something else to stress about. Him having a girlfriend. A girlfriend she didn't like, no less. Who is Steve to you anyway? I mean, is he your uncle? The brother of your father, maybe? Of my mother. Your mother, I see. Eloise noticed a smile on the corner of the teacher's lips, a smile she didn't know about. No, she doesn't see. She has her eyes still closed. Why did you accept Steve's request? Don't you have a lot of work to do? What do you mean? You know I would help any way I can, with everything that happened to you, and I know we weren't especially close, but I always liked you. Are you not happy to see me? I'm happy, I guess. Maybe she wasn't as bad as she thought she would be. Maybe a girlfriend could change him in a good way. If Eloise couldn't do it alone, then maybe the two of them. Oh my good lord. Leave the man alone. Good. To be honest, you've been on my mind for some time now. It's such a tragedy what happened. I knew your father a little because of the parents/teacher meetings. So it shocked me quite a bit when I heard the news, but I'm glad to see you in such a good shape. Yeah, if this was like... if this was Babby's teacher, I would go to the parent-teacher meetings as well. Oh, what Roxanne just said fell off somehow. What was it, though? Eloise fell silent. She was trying to figure out what made her uneasy. I need to go to the washroom. Where is it? Roxanne got up from her seat, looking a bit uncomfortable. Maybe because she thought she was careless with her words. First door on your left. Eloise answered while pointing at the only corridor in the apartment. In front of Steve's room? Thanks. Did she need to know that? After thinking for a while, Eloise finally realized why Roxanne's comment ticked her off. She said she knew her father a little because they've met once, but doesn't this also apply to her mother too? Eloise was pretty sure Roxanne had met her mother at the same meeting. Really makes you go, It's been 5 minutes and she had yet to return. Maybe she's like taking a big one. A number two, she thought. Then she shook her head excessively, thinking Steve was probably rubbing off on her. What? She finally got up from her seat. Oh, because she was so matter of fact, I get it now. She finally got up from her seat, tired of waiting after her. At that same moment, Roxanne popped up in Eloise's field of view, closed the door behind her and said, Sorry, it's that time of the month. Ah, shit, you can't argue against that. You can't. Well, maybe as like another woman or like a girl you can, but as a man you can't argue against that. Like, you better not. Weird, she wasn't sure since she wasn't really paying attention, but she thought she saw Roxanne close the door to her right which isn't a bathroom. What were we talking about again? Right, I remember. Boys! You must have one, don't you? A boy you like, I mean. What? They weren't talking about me? No. For 15 minutes they talked about a non-existent boy that goes by the name of Nicholas. And what about that girl you were always with? Emily? That's strange. You remember my name, but not hers? But she was a lot more active in class than I was. Emily and Eloise, well, they start both with the letter E, I guess, but whatever. We're in the same class during 5th grade. Roxanne's class, and Emily always had a hand up in the air, ready to answer any and every question, while Eloise was always quiet, tilting toward the average. Right, Emily, I'm just tired as all. She was quite a bright child, that one. She said exactly the same about Eloise. Yes, she is. Eloise cast her eyes downward, thinking about what had just taken place earlier. She didn't know what this awkward argument meant for their friendship. It scared her a little. What is it? Did something happen between you two? Well, it's just... She didn't know if talking about it with Roxanne was the right call. She was still a bit suspicious of her. Don't be scared. Someone else's perspective can often bring about a better understanding of what went wrong. I'm not here to take a side, only to help. Right. Eloise reluctantly agreed, feeling compelled to speak about it. It's just that we had an argument. She wanted to make me understand something, but she didn't take my feelings or my point of view into consideration. I knew she wanted to help, but what she said was so unpleasant to hear that I could do nothing but refuse to even to listen to her. I might have been a bit harsh on her, and we have talked since... Wait. She refused to take your point of view, but at the same time, it was so unpleasant to hear that you could do nothing but refuse to even listen to her. I think we know exactly who's in the wrong here, Eloise. You've reached a conclusion yourself. Eloise had purposely left out the core of the conversation, which was Steve, in order not to have Miss Roxanne take notice of Steve's weird personality. As much as she was reluctant to the idea that she might have to deal with her on a regular basis, she still had Steve's happiness at heart. If he truly loved Roxanne, then obviously Eloise would learn to accept it. Obviously. After all, Minecraft Steve was strangely dear to her. And when did that happen? Today. To that, Roxanne giggled softly. Tee. Gah. To laugh at her misfortune of all things, Eloise should have known not to trust her. I'm sorry. Go man. I didn't mean it like that. I just find it cute, that's all. What's cute about this? You. Jesus, being worried about your friendship like that made me remember how I used to feel about those things too. Eloise was surprised, not about Roxanne having worries when she was younger, but simply about her ever being young to begin with? No, but simply about her having a genuine expression on her face, a melancholic yet very human expression. She always thought Roxanne could only be overly superficial. Is this what young people think of adults? Do they think this much about them? But you shouldn't worry too much about it. Roxanne finally added with a smile. You've known each other for a long time, right? I'm sure she's as worried about it as you are. And I'm sure that tomorrow morning she'll apologize to you. But she did nothing wrong. Yeah, some people in history didn't, but no one apologized to them. And I don't think you did either. Most of the time, it's a simple problem of miscommunication. If you really want a tip from me, in order to know if you're in the right to be angry, simply ask yourself, why is this person telling me things like that? Why is this person telling me things like that? Okay, I'm gonna try to remember this advice. Is it to hurt me? For them to feel better about themselves? Or is it because they want to genuinely help me? Therein lies the big difference. So where's Emily in all of this? Well, it still could be both, you know. You don't even know her, Miss Roxanne. She wanted to help me. Right, then you know what to do. I guess so. Eloise felt a bit bad to be mistrustful of Miss Roxanne. She didn't know what to make of those feelings any longer, so she simply said, thanks, timidly. You're welcome. For the first time, Roxanne possessed a very beautiful smile, Eloise thought. Nice. Sprayto likes how the game pans the camera across the background to use it for different scenes. Yeah, there's a lot you can do with the medium of visual novels, actually. You can tell, like, an amateur or someone that has dabbled with the engines and stuff before, or played a lot of them. Especially like when it switches like text styles or something, or fonts or colors of the text. I'm always a fan of that. Also the proper use of music at times. It's a visual novel is just so much more than just a visual novel, I think, if it's well written and well coded. So, did you enjoy yourself? Steve had returned. An hour had passed precisely. We did indeed, right? Yes. Eloise agreed to Roxanne's claim. She had honestly enjoyed herself to her own amazement. Well, 20 minutes of that was like Miss Roxanne shitting out a number 3. Right, then I guess we won't take up any more of your time, Steve said to Roxanne in a somewhat crude tone. Oh, sure. Roxanne was visibly shocked by Steve's cold behavior. He could have at least offered her a coffee or something. He had yet to have a real conversation with her, even though he was the one who planned this whole thing. He said that she's his target. Did he plant a bomb in her car or something? Then Eloise remembered why he had left in the first place. Where's the gift? A gift? Roxanne was oddly perceptive, showing great interest as if she knew it had to be directed at her. A gift? There's none of the... Eloise was glaring at him, annoyed. In here, Roxanne, would you like to go to the theater with me tomorrow? So she won't die tonight, I guess? Or she will die tonight, that's why he can just confidently invite her for tomorrow. Tomorrow? Sorry, but I can't. I have a ton of things to do. Corrections and all. The corner of Steve's lips twitched slightly upward. Eloise noticed. It was almost as if she heard him sigh in relief. But what about Saturday? I have plenty of time during the weekend. Unfortunately, Saturday I have a... Eloise made sure he saw her irritated expression. Date with a beautiful woman. Oh. Roxanne was taken aback by this comment. I meant you, obviously. What a lady killer. Most likely literally. Steve laughed awkwardly in an attempt to smooth the extraordinarily stiff atmosphere. Roxanne left with a smile, and Steve's smile left him. There was no gift? Eloise shouted the moment Roxanne had gone away. She was very upset and overly surprised by it. There was no gift. Steve parroted quite dull. Or dully. Dully? Is that a word? What were you doing then? Steve fell silent, and unfortunately that silence was all she was getting. You can't tell me? She was a bit hurt, understanding that he would lie and even hide things from her. So sorry, but this is something I had to do no matter what. She noticed that he seemed overly conflicted about it. It was as though he didn't find any amusement in hiding things from her. She decided to leave it at that for the time being. Mainly because she liked to see new expressions on his face, even bad ones. Wow, a sadist. Anyway, I guess you owe your success to me now that you have a date with her. It's the day after tomorrow, isn't it? Excited? You're coming with us. What? But it's a date. You need to be on your own. Sorry, but I can't leave you alone. You're scared alone. You shouldn't have lied in order to manipulate him. Now he's using that excuse every single time. Now that I think about it, this isn't so bad in here. Oh, then I guess I can go back to my midnight walks. I'll come with you to the theater. That man was clearly paying her back for forcing a docile life upon him. Yep, that's what you get for trying to fix him. Later that day. Meow. Meow? Was that you? Steve asked Eloise with surprising seriousness, his eyes still in the book. No, wait, you think that sounds like me? Meow. They both walked to the source of the outcry. But look, the white and black... Did they both forget they own a cat? The white and black cat was on the floor, happily rolling around on its back. Meow. They both looked at him, their heads tilted until Steve finally said, I think he's a she. It's 2023. Everything is possible. Yeah, probably. Well, is she pregnant or something? They had a hard time sleeping that night. What is going on? I haven't been fully caught up with the lore. Dude's a autistic psychopath. Girl lost her parents. She's his niece. She's trying to fix him. That's the lore so far. I'm sorry. Emily told Eloise with fervor, her eyes closed and her head tilted downward. I didn't want to hurt your feelings. I know you've been through a lot, lady. It's just... a lot. A lot! She lost both her parents. She's been through a lot. Just like Roxanne told her she would, Emily apologized. Was Eloise simply too immature to understand Emily's feelings, or was it the third-party perspective's power at play? In any case, this made her smile quite truthfully. Don't worry about it. I should have acted a bit differently myself. I'm sorry.
It was great and all that they apologized to one another, but the awkwardness setting in right after made the whole thing emotionally difficult to handle. Eloise was the first one to crack. So, did you watch The Son of My Vampire yesterday? What? Yeah, it was great, but The Son of My Vampire? What title even is this? It was great, but I didn't like when she kissed Marco in that lighthouse at the end. She kissed Marco? Eloise was furious. Marco was not worth it. He had let a dog die, and she would not forget about it. You didn't know? I didn't watch it. Then Eloise explained to Emily what had happened yesterday evening. Miss Roxanne? I thought she was seeing someone. She's quite the detective. Why do you say that? Well, I noticed she was always looking at her phone, her eyes longing for something. I was pretty sure she was in love. What's wrong with this Emily girl? She probably was, Eloise concluded, knowing Emily's perceptiveness better than anyone else. But it was last year, right? I'm sure she's single now. I mean, she's going on a date with him. On a date with the both of you, it seems. She doesn't know about that, though. Oh, what should I do? I don't want to be in their way. So you don't mind having Roxanne as your uncle's girlfriend? I'm not sure anymore. She was kind of sweet yesterday. Emily thought for a while. Like Eloise, she wasn't fond of... What? What do they have against this woman? Wasn't fond of Roxanne. Will she advise her against it? But then she said with an upbeat voice, Alright, let's do this. While you're at the theater with them, ready to choose a movie to watch, I'll appear out of nowhere and the two of us will go see a movie on our own. Steve will be forced to watch a movie with Roxanne alone, and we can go see a movie together at the same time. Neat, right? Yeah, that's a great idea. That was a great idea. Eloise didn't want to get between the two lovebirds. Would have been awkward. But it's a bit weird, don't you think? He doesn't seem to be all that interested if he wants to be there with them. I know, right? It seems as if he's hiding something from me. Let's not focus too much on little details. Let's decide what movie to watch instead, alright? Eloise was glad. Emily was trying her best to uplift her. Without her, she wouldn't know what to do. She was actually looking forward to tomorrow now. Very nice. It's been 3.5 years since I've... Longer now, even. Oh no, 3.5 years since I've last been to a cinema. Do they still work? Do they still show movies there? Later that day, when she was coming out of the shower, she heard Steve talk to somebody. At first, she thought he was on the phone, but soon realized he was speaking to someone on the other side of the door. There's no such thing in here, Steve said to the stranger in a flat, serious tone. Then what's this right there? The man seemed furious. I don't know, $100 bill maybe? Are you trying to bribe me? That thing has been crying the whole day. Everyone knows about it now. Give me a second, I just got a message on my phone. I can't right now. Crying the whole day? Then Eloise realized the reason behind their conversation. You sure you want to go there, old... What's going on, Steve? Eloise couldn't hide the worries in her voice. Nothing, don't worry about it. She was worried about it. You get rid of that thing, or you get out of the apartment. There's a no animal policy here, and if we start making exceptions now, the building will soon be overrun by those things. Wow. What a racist old man. Eloise was now right behind Steve, looking at the annoyed, grumpy-looking man. She knew what was coming, and she was scared. Tears were welling up in her eyes. Steve noticed her, put his large, comforting hand on her head, then returned his eyes on the man that was menacing their day-to-day life. Steve's eyes, which up until now held that fakeness he usually put forward when interacting with other adults, returned to their lifeless yet lovable state. Lovable? She's broken now. We'll be out then. You're really going to give up the apartment for that? Sure. Eloise couldn't believe her ears. Instead of getting rid of an animal he had only known for less than a week, he would give up his house, deal with probably a ton of inconveniences, and have the headache-inducing problem of having to find a new place to live. And all of this he decided spontaneously without even thinking about it? Steve! She wanted to say something, anything, but she had not the courage or the will to do so. I told you, don't worry about it. I want you out by the end of next week, the old man finally declared before soberly walking away. Obviously, she started crying the moment Steve closed the door. She had cried all week long. Steve must think she's a crybaby at this point, but it was simply a simple difference this time. She wasn't crying in sorrow, she was crying in joy. Women. Joy that him, of all the people there was in this world, was a part of her life. Yeah, he's fully getting in there. Her life, I mean. They were supposed to meet with Roxanne at the theater directly. Well, he was supposed to meet with her at the theater directly, so her expression was exactly how Eloise imagined it would be when she saw the two of them arrive together. Eloise? What a pleasant surprise, she uttered, though she didn't look pleased at all. I didn't know you were joining us. I bet you wouldn't, Eloise thought, feeling bad for even being alive right now. All she wanted was to hide in a hole, away from that reproachful yet amiable stare Roxanne was throwing towards her. So, what do you guys want to go see? At least Roxanne was flexible enough, nice, to change the subject at a moment's notice, probably understanding she had to deal with the situation no matter what. Let the girl choose, I guess. Steve must not have been in the mood since he was not in his usual fake mode around Roxanne. He seemed bored, extremely so, and thoughtful. I don't know, let me look a bit more. Eloise was looking around her excessively. She should arrive any minute now, she thought, and most of all, wished. Her rescuer did appear on time, fortunately. Eloise made a beeline for her the moment she popped into her side. Emily, what are you doing here? Was going to see a movie. Wanna go with me? Sure. Hey, Steve said to Eloise, probably noticing what she was planning. She ignored him. So, as you heard, I guess I'm going to see a movie with Emily. See you later. Wait. He attempted to stop it, but let him go. She'd have more fun with a friend. Roxanne had captured Steve by tangling her arms around his. Nice going, Roxanne. Eloise was silently rooting for her while escaping. Emily and Eloise successfully watched a slice of life / drama movie on their own, both wishing strongly that Steve would not mess things up. But Steve did mess things up. Of course he did. I didn't expect anything else. After finishing the movie, Eloise and Emily decided to wait for Steve and Roxanne by the exit, which is... yeah, I guess it's understandable. How else would she get home or something? It took another 30 minutes until they reunited with them. Roxanne's face was enough to spell out their strongest fear. She had an empty, downright depressed expression. When Eloise asked Steve what they had watched, Steve pointed at the poster next to the arcade area. On the poster was a kid disguised in a superhero costume. And to make matters worse, it was an animated movie. Based. You went to see that? You actually choose that? Eloise was shocked, while the three girls, even Roxanne, was shocked by the looks of it. Yeah. Why? I don't know. He was scratching his cheek, looking as clueless as the depressed woman beside him. Was it good at least? Not at all. Steve was very clear on the point at least. He fell asleep, Roxanne whispered, though everybody heard. You did what? Eloise was fuming. He had invited a woman to the theater just to fall asleep next to her? She would have none of that. Roxanne? She looked at Roxanne with a bright smile, which didn't quite hide the fact that she was in fact furious. Would you do us the honor of dining with us tonight? Hey, Steve was trying to interject, but Eloise's eyes were enough to shut him up. Roxanne's face brightened a little with that request. She eventually said yes after some consideration. How does she not get the message? Like how he's been acting cold all evening, most likely. Was even sleeping in the cinema. How does she not get it? How do you manage to beat this shit on a date? I'm dumbfounded. By just not caring about the other person, I think. Eloise sighed a little. There might still be something to salvage in this failure of a date. I guess I'm going to go now. Emily had one hand on the exit door, ready to leave at the first opportunity. She probably thought the situation was awkward and none of her business. Eloise understood her feelings well, nodding to her frankly. But Steve stopped her right there and then. Emily, right? Would you do us the honor of dining with us tonight? What? Emily asked, flabbergasted. What a word. I love it. What? Eloise and Roxanne said too, flabbergasted. The more the merrier, right? He was obviously doing this on purpose. This is a date? Couldn't have guessed. Well, it was one man and 3 women. Obviously, it was a date. 1 woman, 2 girls, but still. They went to the supermarket to buy the ingredients for tonight's dinner. And while they were at it, Roxanne bought a 24-pack of beers with the excuse that the best way to know someone is by witnessing how they hold their liquor. Damn, she's a great school teacher, all right. I'm kidding, by the way. Secretary doesn't drink alcohol at all. But holy shit, why would she do that? She's like with 2 minors And this guy who's obviously very disinterested, is she trying to make him drunk so she can, like, seduce him or something? She decided to get shit-faced? Well, yeah, maybe that's it. Eloise guessed that Roxanne wanted to lighten the mood a little by drinking with Steve. In fact, Eloise was very curious to know how Steve would act if he was intoxicated. The four of them made dinner together, amusingly enough. At first, Steve wanted to do everything on his own, but Roxanne would have none of that. She had a pretty strong sense of leadership, something Eloise and Emily knew particularly well since they once had her as their teacher. Roxanne gave jobs to everyone. Nice. Carefully supervising each and every one of them. She would tease Steve in particular, amazed by a sense of delicacy which didn't reflect his persona at all. This made Eloise stay. This right here. Everyone chatting, laughing together. Something that would most resemble a family. Her family. The people and animal dearest to her were all regrouped in this very room, doing something together. For the first time in a week, she had forgotten how pitiful the situation was. She no longer felt sorry for herself. They finally ate. With Roxanne and Steve helping, it was obviously very good. Emily was the most surprised by this, since she never ate Steve's cuisine. Roxanne had started acting a bit more coquettish around Steve, giving him playful stares and touching him on the arm or shoulder with subtle interest. He, on the other hand, was very docile and uninterested. He was acting the way he usually acts around Eloise. Was it a bad thing, though? She wasn't sure. Could be because he no longer saw the need to fake anymore, or maybe he trusted Roxanne enough to be more himself around her. What about Emily, though? No one could know what he was thinking but him. After dinner, Roxanne suddenly exclaimed, "Do you guys want to play a game?" "Hey, wanna play a game?" Before fishing into her handbag and pulling out a pack of playing cards. The two girls weren't fond of playing with cards, but they said yes nonetheless, maybe a bit coerced by Roxanne's unusual enthusiasm. So, Magic the Gathering, or like Uno, or... Steve said no without any difficulty though. "Don't be like that," Roxanne said teasingly, before grabbing 2 beers from the newly opened 24-pack box and forcefully giving one to him. "For us, it will be a drinking game." What exactly are we going to play? To everyone's surprise, Steve's interest seems to have been sparked by the introduction of alcoholic beverages. Because he knows he's gonna win and just gonna like get her out of the picture by making her drunk. "You seem confident. I like that. But I'd let you know that I'm very good at handling my drinks." "That's cute," Steve said without a hint of humor in his voice. Ouch! As much as Eloise wanted to back Roxanne on this, she had no doubt in her mind that Steve could drink much more than her. In fact, she couldn't imagine Steve having any change in behavior even if he had to drink the whole box by himself. "You didn't really say that, did you?" Roxanne's tone was subtly irritated. Her eyebrows were twitching faintly as if she was using a lot of effort to hide her anger, which didn't work. I said it. "You'll regret this." "No." Emily and Eloise glanced at each other from the corner of their eyes. At first they wanted to laugh at how immature Steve and Roxanne were acting, but the more it escalated, the more it became evident that it had become something more than just a simple juvenile game. At last, Roxanne declared they would play the ultimate game, and that every time one of them, I assume, Steve and Roxanne, discarded a card, the other would have to drink. Tied to an actual mechanic. That's smart, not to like winning or losing. After 8 beers and 5 games, the atmosphere had become somewhat heavy. Eloise and Emily had finally given up on playing with them. They instead retreated to the living room, watching a movie while glancing from time to time at the 2 drinking buddies who looked more like 2 mortal enemies. They were still at it. Yet to make matters worse, they had changed game, deciding that poker would be even more punishing. Of all the things they could bet with, instead of money or chips, they decided they would bet with the amount of beer they would consume instead. But by that point, Roxanne was kind of swaying from left to right. Her eyes seemed hard to keep open. Steve, on the other hand, was unmoving, physically, and most likely psychologically unmoved. He had stopped talking for some time now. "I don't believe your poker face. You must be at your limit by now. Just give up," said the woman who had to take multiple breaths in between those lines in order not to lose track of her own inner monologue. Still, Steve was not speaking. He didn't take the bait. Yet Roxanne was right for one thing. His expression was a bit stiffer than usual. Was he affected after all? 10 minutes later, Roxanne was KO on the dinner table. KO! Steve sighed, got up from his seat slowly, grabbed and then lifted the teacher carefully. He looked at us and said, "Surprise suplex!" And then he smashed her into the ground. I'll lie her down for a while. I'm still capable. Another round. Roxanne said, though she didn't move much. Steve didn't listen to her. Eloise wouldn't either. She was way past the point where she could evaluate her own needs appropriately. He took the first door on his right, his room, disappearing into his room quietly. Emily and Eloise looked at each other a bit stunned, but soon started giggling uncontrollably at the surreal sight of their former teacher's decadent behavior. Ooh. They continued watching their movie for another 30 minutes until they heard a big thud, as if someone had just fallen on the floor without cushioning their fall. Do you think they are? I don't know. They pushed the volume up button from the television's controller until they were sure they wouldn't hear anything that they shouldn't be hearing. Wow! The least noisy brats in existence, I guess. Pushed off the sofa. I think he just leaned her against the wall and started reading. And after some time, she just fell on her own. Or something. 25 minutes later, Steve came out of his room with Roxanne still in his arms. He had put a sweatshirt on her, probably to make sure she wouldn't be cold during the ride home. Emily, you want a ride? She looked at her cell phone, then at Eloise, then at her cell phone again, and ultimately said, sure, without a hint of assuredness. Bye, Eloise said with a big grin. Text me when you're home. Sure. Emily seemed a bit scared, probably because she didn't feel comfortable being alone with Steve. Eloise gave her a confident nod, assuring her silently that everything would be alright. The least that she could do is, get in the car with her? Why wouldn't she? They could spend, an additional time together. Why would she come with her? Soon Eloise was left on her own in this big, seemingly empty apartment. After a mere 5 minutes, she noticed that she didn't lie to Steve after all. When she's alone, this place does indeed scare her. And it doesn't take much. A neighbor walking loudly, or the cat playing with a mouse toy. Every little thing would catch Eloise's attention. It didn't take long for her to shamelessly open all the lights in the living room. That's when she realized the door to Steve's room was opened, something she was not accustomed to seeing. She thought back to what had just transpired. Steve had Roxanne in his arms when he came out of his room, so his movements were probably restrained, and that's why his door was now left completely open. She decided that she had to close it. It ticked her off somehow. As she walked towards the door, she noticed something shiny reflecting light from under Steve's bed. It's a Pokemon! This caught her attention. She impulsively entered the room. His room, for no other reason than curiosity alone. It was weird because she had never entered his room before. This was the definition of unknown territory in her own home. Obviously, though, everything was quite plain. Colors were pretty much the same, albeit with slightly different tones of grey and white. He had only a bed, a couple of cabinets for clothes and other necessaries, and a closet. She could only sigh in desperation when she noticed a complete lack of personality that was emanating from his room. Or maybe that was it. Maybe that was the extent of Steve's personality right there. Almost entirely empty, plain, and devoid of life. She went down on all fours as she remembered why she had actually come in here in the first place. She kept her left hand on the floor in order to keep her balance, and then extended her right arm underneath Steve's bed, sweeping from top to bottom in an attempt to find what had shone so brightly in her eyes just moments earlier. How far away can it be if she saw it out of the corner of her eyes? Was it a simple coin, or maybe a jewel? No, Steve doesn't even wear jewelry. She suddenly touched something small and cold. It felt like steel and had a rectangular form. A lighter, that's why the logo is a lighter. This is it, she thought. She grabbed it and pushed her weight back in order to sit on her knees, but before she could open her fist and look at what treasure she'd just now excavated, something vivid appeared in her line of sight. It was her other hand, the one in which had been on the floor just a second earlier. Bloody? There was blood on it. She gasped. Her heart almost jumped out of her throat. She thought she had just now hurt herself, but it didn't sting. She had no physical reaction aside from the strong fear grasping at her heart right now. When her head became a bit clearer, another thought emerged in her mind. This didn't calm her down at all. In fact, she started hyperventilating. She looked ever so slightly at the floor in front of her. A couple of drops of blood were transgressing on the otherwise clean, dark wooden floor, blood coming from somewhere other than her. She then remembered the thud she heard earlier with Emily, the sound of someone falling on the floor and Steve exiting his room with the motionless Roxanne in his arms, hidden by the dim light of the television and the dark sweatshirt she was now wearing. No. This can't be true. He's not violent? But he had a gun, didn't he? But he promised her he wouldn't use violence anymore. Then why is she shaking? Her right hand was still forming a fist. She was scared of what was inside of that fist. She was scared because she already knew what it was. She had to open it still. She had to make sure. Ever so slightly, she opened her hand. There it was, a lighter, a beautiful lighter. She hated that lighter. She hated it because her father would smoke with it, and he always had it with him. It was something special to him, or so he once said. It was given to him by his late father. He would never part from it. Then, why was it here of all places? Why did Steve have the lighter of her father? Right then she heard someone unlock the front door. She panicked. She took the sleeve of her shirt and quickly tried to erase the left-hand mark she had left in the blood on the floor, but when she realized she was instead making it a lot worse, she gave up and retreated to her room instead. She sat on her bed the furthest away from the door as she possibly could. For 1, 2, 3 minutes, she stared at the door intensely, holding her breath as tight as the lighter now digging in the palm of her hand. Right before her panic could alleviate, someone, Steve, started closing in on her door. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, 4 steps, and then 5. Soon a shadow was creeping from underneath her door. A powerful sensation was gripping at her from the back of her neck, spreading to her whole body like 1,000 stone-cold ants. Goosebumps strong enough that she had to close her eyes in order to withstand them. Still, she had not moved a muscle. She was frozen. It had only been 30 seconds, yet she was at the end of her rope, ready to give up at any moment. But nothing was happening. In fact, the shadow retreated ever so slowly. She heard another door close, the spring of a bed creak, and then absolute silence. The eeriness of that silence settling inside the artificial-looking apartment was enough to make her doubt the danger she thought she was in. When her fear finally lessened a little, Emily's face popped into her mind. Eloise instantly grabbed her phone and wished with all her might that she had received a new message. To her relief, she had. She exhaled strongly, and the tension throughout her body started dissipating just like the oxygen inside her lungs. It was as though she was deflating like a balloon. Why was she scared anyway? Everything's alright. It's not gonna be a message from Emily. She then read the message with a calmer mind. I'm home. Okay. Fortunately, the whole ride was kinda weird. Your uncle was really quiet and Roxanne was lying on the rear seats looking completely dead. Completely fucking dead! I just hope she'll be okay. Going to bed now. Really tired. Dead tired. Good night. Eloise was happy to know that Emily was okay, though she didn't understand why she wouldn't be. She didn't understand her own feelings right now. The apprehension stirring at her heart had yet to lessen though, ridiculously enough. She decided to read Emily's message a second time. That's when she realized why she was so disconcerted. Roxanne was lying on the rear seats looking completely dead. Then all sorts of things popped into her mind. Psychopathy, gun, target, the blood on the floor, her parents' murder, the lighter, his fake smile, and now, Roxanne looking completely dead. Eloise had a hard time falling asleep that night. Understandably, I think. She eventually lost consciousness while creating all sorts of scenarios inside her head. A room shouldn't have a personality, it's dead. I think if you'd enter like my basement here, my basement room, and you would see like my dartboard on the wall and my computer setup and the copious amounts of anime girl figurines. You'd think, yes, yep, this goes into my cringe collection or something. I've arrived and the game is talking about murder, whatever. We established earlier that the dude is literally you, Blue. The next day, Sunday, she almost didn't get out of bed. She stayed in her room and chatted with Emily the whole time. She had calmed down a little, but that's only because Emily was trying to rationalize with her. She was still very scared. Scared of the man she called family. How many anime girl figurines do you have? I can't count from here because I'd have to differentiate between girls and boys, basically. Remind me later, and I'm gonna count for you. For the past 2 days, breakfasts have been extremely quiet. For the past 2 days, they have been extremely quiet. He had probably noticed by now that she'd entered his room, she thought, that she'd seen the blood, that she'd taken the lighter. Yet he was silent. He didn't act any different than he normally would. Did he not care? Or was she simply misunderstanding something somehow? Was it a bit of both? She couldn't ask him because it would mean confessing that she did indeed enter his room. It would also mean confronting him about things which she was too scared to hear about. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe him even if it meant being lied to, but she knew he would tell her the truth, and she didn't want to hear it if it meant destroying her family. So she didn't ask. She simply waited for the truth to forcibly emerge, or submerge completely. She strongly wished for the latter. The fact that it's more than you can count says enough. It's like more than 4 though, Desperado. It doesn't tell you anything. It was noon. High noon. She was sat at a desk. She was thoughtful and silent, just like the day before. She eagerly awaited the moment where Emily would poop inside the classroom with the lunch she brought from the cafeteria. She wanted to forget all about those negative thoughts, and she knew Emily would help her. Emily always helped. That is until Emily actually arrived. She had a concerned expression. By that point, Eloise was no longer happy to see her. She was, after all, bringing something with her that Eloise didn't want to know about. Eloise, Roxanne didn't come this morning. Eloise froze on the spot, even though she knew something was coming. She looked at Emily's stiff expression, understood how disturbed she was, and decided to come up with a conclusion of her own. Maybe she's just sick. I mean, did you see how much she drank? Enough to throw up for 2 days, that's for sure. She didn't call sick. She didn't call at all. How does she know? How is this girl such an internet detective? Eloise, with everything you've told me, I think you were onto something. Your uncle... Don't say it. Don't say it. But Eloise, what if he's really dangerous, though? What if it's a simple misunderstanding? I can fix him. I think you should sleep at my house tonight, just in case. No. Eloise blurted out dryly. She couldn't believe he would do something to her. No matter what he is or what he had done, he would never hurt her. Because I'm special. We are Monday anyway. Is this how you say it? It's Monday anyway. Your mother wouldn't want that. Why not tell my mother? I'm sure she... Emily stopped at that. Eloise's eyes were alarmed. You can't. We can't tell anyone until we're sure. After all, if they find out he's unreliable, they might take her away from him. This dude that's most likely a psychopathic killer? Yeah, we wouldn't... let's not risk it, okay? We don't know if he's just a psychopath or a psychopathic killer at this point, okay? There's a stark difference between both. She doesn't want to risk destroying her daily life for immature and hasty theories. Yes, improbable theories. You're not really planning on doing nothing? We need to make sure he's not dangerous. I can see how scared you are. It's my problem. I'll deal with it. Hashtag my problem. Eloise said with no intentions of doing so. She plans on doing nothing, praying that the problem will eventually go away along with her fears. This hits a little bit too close to home. But trust me, you're the first one I'll call if there's anything. Again, Eloise had lied. She didn't know how she could lie with such a straight face. Alright, but at least promise me this. When? Steve was looking straight in front of him, maneuvering the car as would a diligent robot. School was over and it was time to go home. A home they would soon have to say goodbye to, thanks to Eloise's cat. Again he was quiet, not looking her way, not even attempting to show that he cares. Was he just shy, or did he prefer silence over speaking with her? The last thing she heard from him didn't even come out of his mouth. He had sent a review yesterday night about the last book he had read. A good review. He even put emoticons in it to make it feel as if he was cheerful about the whole thing. Normally she would have smiled at that, but not now. Maybe never. She remembered what had promised to Emily. At first she didn't plan on going through with it, but his perpetual silence was infuriating her. It compelled her to act. Steve, I need to ask you something. What is it? How is Babby formed? He said almost instantly, as though he was mentally preparing himself for the moment where she would start speaking with him. About my parents' house, my house. I still have my house, right? Steve was silent. He threw a glance at her from the corner of his eye for the first time since she entered the car. He finally answered her. Yes, with no hint of falsehood in his voice. We could live in my house, right? I mean, now that we need to find one? Aren't you... He stumbled with his words a little. It was the first time she saw that big of a mishap from him. Aren't you still a bit too emotionally unstable to do that, though? It's a big commitment. She was. In fact, she didn't really want to live there. With all the memories still very much vivid in her mind, she would probably cry at every little thing her eyes would fall onto. It was Emily who asked her to say this. She told Eloise that she should make sure he wasn't using her, that it wasn't the only reason he was taking care of her. Money. But now he told her that she still owned the house even. He didn't sell it. He wasn't using her. Sure, he was acting a bit strange, and Emily had told her to especially look for that, but that didn't prove anything. You're right, forget I asked. It's not important anyway. If you really want to, we can, he said nonchalantly, although his hands were grabbing more strongly at the steering wheel than ever before. It's alright, we'll find somewhere else. I already found a good place, if you're interested, that is. You can come visit with me tomorrow. Great. Silence returned swiftly, as if the true master of the black sports car. They were close to the apartment. If she stopped her inquiry there might not be another chance for her until dinner, and she might not have the courage when that time comes. By the way, Roxanne didn't come to school today. Do you know anything about that? No. Do you think might still be sick from Saturday? No. You don't seem to care all that much. Not really. She was sad. The Saturday she had enjoyed so much was obviously only fun for her. He probably saw it as a hindrance, if nothing else. Maybe he noticed that she was depressed by his words, or maybe he cared more than she thought, but then he said, I'll go check up on her after dinner, alright? She nodded, though she didn't know if checking up on her would mean at her house or at a hole he dug somewhere. The killer always returns to the scene of his crime. And obviously he's going home now, so he does do it, yeah. He does return. It's time to shut up Eloise forever. I don't know, it's time to shut up everyone around her first. I think that's his game, basically. I'm going, he uttered, one hand on the doorknob and the other fidgeting in his pocket, probably searching for his keys. Do you want me to relay a message or something? Eloise's mind filled with all sorts of thoughts. Apologetic ones, thankful ones, sympathetic ones, but she instead settled for something simple and generic. Tell her I enjoyed our time together. Right. He mumbled and then went out, a distant look plastered on his face. She was lying on the couch, the television running in the background, her eyes looking at the ceiling. She was thinking. She had been thinking for the past few days, much more than she normally would. Still, she could never arrive at an acceptable conclusion. A good conclusion. The 11 years she's been living in this world never prepared her for this kind of dilemma, but it seems that even another 11 years wouldn't be enough to really understand the depths of everything that is going on around her. She's 11! She's 11! She took something out of her pocket, something small, made out of steel with a rectangular form. She looked at it for a time, and then made her decision. She would do nothing. She would forget about it. She didn't know if it was the right decision, but she wanted to stay true to her feelings. She needed to. She had to. At least she didn't respond with 11 out of 10 blue. Jesus Christ. Something Steve said to her then came back to her mind. You can make yourself believe anything you want. You can make anyone believe anything you want, as long as you find a use for it. Maybe that's what he meant. Maybe that's what he was telling her. To close her eyes to the things she didn't want to see and to make sure that nobody ever noticed them either. She got up slowly, took 12 steps unevenly, and arrived in front of the door. What lies behind it is unknown. As many truths exist behind it as there is consciousness in this world. She opened it, but not without difficulty. Her incessant trembling was making everything look immeasurably more heavy and difficult than it actually was. When the door ultimately opened and the darkness from the unknown territory made itself known to her, Eloise froze for no apparent reason. Send me that IMDb title in a Let's Talk arcane, please. I'm curious to read about it. Everything was exactly the same as it was 2 days ago, minus the blood, but she was still unable to take a step forward. The fear was gripping at her heart, weighing her down, scaring her out. Taking one step in front of her seemed like an impossible task. What was a mere 30 seconds felt like an hour as she stared towards the darkness which held knowledge defying her cherished ignorance. At last her hand reached the side of the wall, practically unconsciously, and flipped the light switch in one heavy motion. The light, which appeared almost instantly, was a cue to keep up the momentum. She entered the room dashing, almost fearing the door would close on her if she didn't act accordingly. A jolt of shivers ran down her spine. With the lighter in her right hand, she went down on all fours, literally dropping to her knees. It was as though she was reenacting the scene from 2 days ago, but instead of searching for something, she was returning what she had robbed, what had corrupted her mind. You don't want to corrupt the mind of an 11-year-old girl, seriously. She wanted to do this quickly. She didn't want to think about it. She wanted to be done with it, or so she told herself. She let go of the cursed object under Steve's bed, returned her arm to her side, and then pushed with all her strength on both her hands and toes in order to get up as quickly as possible. But she's not as supple as she thought she was. She fell on her butts. On her butts? Is that like a plural? After staggering multiple times over. It hurt quite a lot. Her mind became blank due to the time it took to understand what had just happened. Then her eyes returned to what was in front of her. She noticed the closet she had never really acknowledged until now. It was open just a tiny bit, just enough to spark off something dangerous in her mind. What if Steve's in that closet? The ignorance she held so dear was now in direct conflict with a newfound curiosity. She just can't help but burn herself, right? That's the thing. Curiosity literally killed the cat, and will kill her cat, and will kill her, but she just can't help it. She got back to her feet slower than ever, almost as if she had forgotten all about the urgency that drove her to stumble in the first place. In no time at all, she was in front of the big, large sliding doors. It was calling for her. I like that effect. She pulled the handle to the side, easily, blankly. The wardrobe was empty, at least empty in the sense that it was not used according to its usual utility. The only thing inside the wardrobe was a backpack sitting in a corner. She reached out for it, and that's when she realized it was something else. A gun. A gun with a long metallic part extending its tip for no logical reason. It made her think of the things action heroes put on their gun in order to silence them. She left the gun where it was and unzipped the bag effortlessly. Everything had become easy the moment she parted from the cursed object, or was it a simple coincidence, perhaps? She just can't help it. I see what you did there. The bag had a survival feel to it. Hunting knife, clothes, emergency kit, nothing that would shock or outright scare her. She almost sighed in relief, but then noticed the front pocket, which visibly held something important. It was a cell phone, not the one she was accustomed to, not the old, pitiable one she reprimanded him to even use. No, another one, slightly older than the one he bought a few days ago, but still a new model from last year or the year before that. He lied, she concluded. He lied to her when she asked him if he owned one. To think he would lie about something like this, she thought he lied for adult stuff, adult reasons, things she wouldn't comprehend, not this. She booted it up, angry. It had almost no battery left. That's the first thing she observed. The second thing was the clear lack of care that was put into it. It contained only 2 apps. How did she unlock it? The first one being the phone app, the second being the camera app. She opened the latter. I can't wait. I can't wait! She swiped picture after picture. Her hand was uncontrollable. Her body was shivering. Her breathing was inconsistent. Her eyes could not part from it. From the bottom of her gut, a powerful and unsupportable fire, yet cold air-like feeling was pushing its way up to her neck, squeezing, suffocating her with astonishing strength. There was no coherence in her thoughts, no thinking to her actions. Everything from within her body was urging her to escape from this place, any place. This primitive emotion was maddening. She had almost forgotten who she was. The first sets of pictures were of Roxanne. Roxanne walking, Roxanne opening a door, Roxanne shopping, Roxanne eating, etc. Hundreds of those. There was no shame in it. He had efficiently stalked her for many days or maybe even weeks. But that was not all. There were pictures of a destroyed car too. All angles possible. A grotesque scene. The car, which was supposed to be of normal size, had been crushed into a ridiculous state. Blood could be seen on the dashboard, seats, even the back window. The only thing she could be thankful of was that there were no corpses to be seen in those pictures. Still, she threw up right when she understood what she was looking at. How many pictures did it take, you think? How many pictures did it take for her to realize, hey, this is the car Mom and Dad owned? Then she looked back at the last set of pictures. No, that was not the right way to put it. The last 2 pictures. They were of her. Her looking down on the ground, mourning most likely, and the other, visibly younger and happier. And that was all. That was it. She was petrified. First, she was afraid. She no longer knew who this man was. She no longer wanted to know him. She was empty. Her eyes were hollow, her breathing was shallow, and her strength had long since parted from her. It was as if the Grim Reaper himself had taken her soul, and she was left as a moving, breathing husk. She trusted him. How could she? Is she that blind? Is it her fault? Her eyes, after looking through nothingness for a time, focused back on the phone in front of her. She had almost forgotten. She was not done yet. Right. She opened the phone app rather matter-of-factly. Only one phone number was registered in it. She pushed the call button. Why? She doesn't know. There's no reason. To know him better. Because she could. She wants to know. None of the above. It rang multiple times. Too many times. But she didn't care. Time was not perceivable. Not in the state of mind she was in. It was not interesting. Not important. Not really a thing to begin with. So it was okay. Then nothing. Not nothing, but no more ring. Someone had answered. Someone was breathing. Was it her breathing? A voice made itself heard. She gasped. I didn't think I would ever see this number again. An ogre-like voice. I didn't think I would ever see this number again. Oh, wait. Can I do a Shrek? What does he sound like? Hey, donkey, I didn't think I would ever see this number again. Is that what he sounds like? In English, I don't actually know. An ogre-like voice was growling from the other side of the line. Fear crept back in and reared its ugly head. She was no longer empty. She was very much her. She was very much real, and she was scared stiff. Who is it? The voice demanded strongly. She didn't know what to say. She didn't know why she had called in the first place. She should probably hang up. A little girl. Hey, is everything alright? Never do a Scottish accent again. Already failed that mission. His tone changed all of a sudden. He was a bit more friendly, less threatening. Maybe he isn't bad? What's wrong with this girl? What's wrong with her? Maybe he isn't all too bad? This person on the phone, obviously in the phone of a killer or something else? I got the wrong number, sorry. Wait, don't hang up. Is everything okay? Are you hurt or in danger? Danger? Yes, danger. It's that man, isn't it? That's why you have his phone? That man is dangerous? He knew Steve. Someone knows him and refers to him as that man. Where are you? He's very dangerous. You need to be careful with him. I can protect you. Protect her? From Steve? Why? Why? Because he's a killer. He kills for money. He kills for money? Well, that's better than doing it out of fun, I would say. Roxanne popped into her mind, and then her parents. She shivered. There was no end to it. Why would anyone want to kill Roxanne, though? Who would pay money to kill like a grade school teacher? Yes. That's why you need to be careful around him. You need to tell me where you are. Can you do that for me? Oh, God, no. Don't tell him. He's most likely tracking the phone at this moment. Where I am? Why do you want to know that? To protect you. What else? You don't want to die, right? Right. That man from Guilty Gear? I don't actually like. It's been a while since I played. I'm not sure I ever played Guilty Gear. I played some Blast Blue, but she was waiting. It was late. She had closed all the light in the apartment. Is this how you call it? Closing the light? Is it not turning off the light? She had been thinking really hard while she waited for him. She was barely standing. Due to all the heavy thinking she's doing, I guess. She couldn't live like this anymore. Oh, the music is very good. Listen to this. Like two tiers to this music. Both are very nice. Every time she thought of her parents, her heart bled insufferably. She thought she could ignore this, but she obviously couldn't. She's not as strong as she thought she was. Oh, the music's getting even better. How come some indie novels have like these banger tracks in them? She had something in her hand, something heavy, something cold. She didn't know if she could use it, but that was hardly a problem right now. She was desperate. At last the front door opened. He entered as though nothing had happened. He was reaching for the light switch to his right, but... Don't open it. Don't turn it on, you meant, she said, note money trembles in her voice and the many daggers piercing at her heart. He did as he was told. He closed the door behind him without complaining. His eyes were probably not accustomed to the darkness right now. It was the right time to act, or so she was told. You should turn the safety off before using that thing, he told her in a monotone voice, as if he knew that what was going on. The safety? On the left side, there's a switch on top of the handle. Push it up. She couldn't believe it. How could she believe it? He was actually instructing her to efficiently kill him when he could have simply taken the thing away from her. Oh, I love this! Finally, another CG. It's been a while since we got one. Why? Oh, the music is great! Oh, this is what I expect out of a scene like this. She didn't understand. Why? Look at her. Look at his comically large finger in her hands. She makes it look so big. Why what? Why are you like this? As if you don't care. You never care. It's too late. It's not too late. Way too late. Please stop me. Say, don't let me. Are you really? Please. A killer? Someone who kills for money? How do you know about that? What do you think? Steve, she has your gun, okay? God damn it, you're as dense as she is. Her arms go up in the air furiously. She points the murderous object directly at him. Her aim is not steady at all, but it doesn't matter. She probably wouldn't miss from that distance. That's what they all think. You! Why don't you even try to hide it? She was screaming out of her lungs at this point, but Steve didn't care. He maintained his inquiry unmoved. Who told you this? Why does it even matter? Did you kill Roxanne then? Is that why you have so many pictures of her? I need pictures! Pictures of Roxanne! You've seen those. Wait, don't tell me. You actually called him? His tone of voice changed all of a sudden. He seemed alarmed. He looked agitated. He was clearly acting differently than his usual self. She felt pressured. Him? You mean Shrek? The man in your phone? What did you say to him? He was clearly not himself. His eyes were wide open. He was gritting his teeth. He was contracting every muscle of his body, even his sphincter. Like the one in his anus, because there's a lot of him in the body. His voice was one of intense rage and fright. He was extremely taller than he was just 1 second ago. What, he grew? It doesn't matter. She started to feel threatened. Yes, it does. He was about to walk up to her. He was menacing. He was intimidating. She never saw him like that. Stay away! Her hands became steady. She was about to shoot from sheer terror, but he immediately stopped at her words, as if those words were some sort of a protective spell meant to keep him at bay. Stay away. She started crying, to think he would be a murderer, to think he was a liar, to think he was not what she thought he was. She was disappointed, and most of all, she was angry. Did you kill them? Who? My parents. Did you kill them? Or maybe he's investigating who killed her parents and killing them. Everything came down to this. The man she had loved just a couple of days. She loved him? What is wrong with you? You knew him for like a week? I do understand that she's in a very vulnerable position after losing her parents, but how could she start loving someone she didn't know before that? Who's acting like this? How? Why? And the funny thing is, I wouldn't even pin this on bad writing. I can see someone actually being this dumb. I mean, she's a little girl, okay? But the man she had loved just a couple of days ago was now asked if he had killed her parents. She was enraged just thinking about it. No, I'm... Liar! Pants on fire! What about the lighter then? And the pictures on your phone? You're clearly hiding something! No, it's a misunderstanding. Then who did it then? And why did they die? If it's not you, then who? She was upset. She was confused. I want my parents back! He was silent. He wasn't not even looking at her. His eyes were on the floor, thoughtful and severe. The dark shadow lurking behind him was no more. I know you know what happened, so tell me. She wanted to believe him. She wanted that so much. Who did it? He finally made eye contact with her. His piercing brown eyes returned gradually to their usual fish-like state. His body loosened quite a bit. He opened his mouth ever so diligently and said, You're right. I did. Something broke inside her. A dry, piercing sound echoed throughout the synthetic-looking apartment. Her finger tightened around the trigger mechanically. She shot him. But she did not shoot the deputy. Ooh! Choose a perspective! Oh, I didn't expect that! Oh, who do we go first? Oh, God, I have to go with the... No, wait. Who do you think holds the actual answers to this? Oh, who do we go first, everyone? Rubbing my hands furiously. The lighter is for the gas lamp. The gas lighting is real. Japanese games had an extremely low bar for... Oh, it's zooming in on her! Something next to her. There's like an E coming into. The Japanese games had an extremely low bar for males, but this is crazy. What do you mean? Are you complaining? I think he's amazingly written, like in a weird sense, because there's people out there like him. You don't get to see this every day, you know? Like you just get these weird Mary Sues and like Gary Stews. Him, obviously, he's based. Uncle, do a poll. Left, right. Let's do a poll real quick. Okay, just a quick one. Because here we go. It has a button now. New poll. Who to choose? Oh, you're like, okay. Okay. You're limited on like space, sadly. Okay, you have a in the chat window or whatever. I don't actually know how it works. There should be a poll popping up at the top of something. And you click on it and you click who you want me to choose. Like him or her. The uncle, Minecraft Steve, or Miss Roxanne. The hot teacher. I have no strong opinions one way or another. Thank you, Desperito, for letting us know, though. Without your input, I would have never been able to decide myself. I voted correctly. Says Manimoto. It's an interesting statement, actually. You can interpret that in several ways. Okay. I'm not even gonna look who's leading or something right now. I'm just gonna wait until the poll runs out while I pour myself something to drink. Could go to the toilet as well. Let me go to the toilet. Oh, I'm afraid of like... No, I'm not gonna go to the toilet. I'm afraid like that the result will pop up and blend out again. Like disappear before I return. So... Never knew how voting works. You're welcome. You're welcome. At times, you're asked to vote by mail so they can fake your vote more easy, okay? Do that. Should be washing the dishes, but this is much more engaging. Just wash the dishes while you watch me, Blue. What's wrong with you? Oh, also, washing dishes? What the fuck? Oh, you have a girlfriend now. Of course you wash the dishes. If you were alone, you could just leave them in the sink until you need them again. And that's how I was living when I was like basically living alone. I just only used up what I had to use, and then I cleaned it up before I had to use it again or something. Oh, he won with 7 votes against 4 votes. 64% against 36%. Is there a way to show this on the screen? I don't think so, sadly. Anyway, he won. I'm living alone right now because of university. Blue, enjoy that time. Enjoy the time. Enjoy living alone. If you're feeling lonely when you're alone, you're in bad company. I very much like that quote. Okay, we're gonna choose his perspective first. Hopefully, we get to see the other one later. I mean, I did save, so. Whew. Steve's perspective. Bum bum. He sat on the corner of the bed, exhausted and sighing deeply. Another one of those bad guys, he thought to himself while scanning the filthy motel room with his brown, heavy-looking eyes. The television was on, its volume to the maximum. There was a box of tampons and some Thai food overflowing from the trash can, and a backpack was left half open in the corner of the room with what seemed to be stolen towels spilling out of it. Cheapskate. He muttered to himself, or to the person in question, what was left of him anyway. He was about to light a cigarette, but grumpily decided otherwise when he thought back to the situation he was currently in. He put a stop to this moment of leisure by slowly getting back up and turned towards the source of his irritation. The corpse of a man was lying on the bed, a pillow still on his head. He had to call him. He knew he had to, but he didn't want to. He's been wasting his time next to a corpse for the past hour, even though he knows perfectly well how unprofessional that is, how immature that is, but he doesn't care. His cell phone inevitably vibrated. He looked at it without emotions. Mark is displayed on the screen. It's him. It's Shrek. It's the ogre. He diligently brought the phone to his ear, but right before he had the time to answer the call, he heard something familiar coming out of the television. His eyes turned to it. It was the news channel. They were reporting on a car accident, a fatal car accident. The names of the victims were very well known to him. Personally known to him. Yet he didn't feel a thing. His nails dug into his palms nonetheless. His jaw was infuriatingly tight. He was sweating a lot, even though he was standing still, doing nothing. He looked back at his phone, then at the corpse of the man, and finally at the television. He ignored the call, wrote the address down, took the corpse to his car, and then drove away. Is that why his car stunk so bad in the beginning? Stunk or stank? Stank, right? The big stank. He had efficiently faked his death. Well, efficiently might not be the right word, but it would suffice for the time being. Until they get a hold of his dentist, that is. Not that his fake identity had one to begin with. 2 hours had passed since he heard the news. He wanted to go directly to the scene, but after much deliberation, he concluded that it would serve nothing. So he went to the house instead. It was past 11 at night. All the lights were off. Their daughter was probably not there. A distant member of the family was taking care of her, most likely. He sneaked in with ease. So what did the teacher... I'm stumbling over my words. What did the teacher have to do with her parents being killed? Because that must have been it, right? He remembered what his sister had sent him not so long ago. A message, something out of character, something which didn't sit well with him at all. In that message, she was apologizing to him and telling him that she was suspecting her husband of having an affair. I mean, I did say it earlier. Of course he was. Of course he was fucking the teacher. I would have done the same. No, I wouldn't have. Obviously. The teacher didn't kill them. I think it was like a lover's quarrel or something, like an actual accident. But it was because of the teacher, most likely. Nothing in the message pointed to the tragedy that had just now unfolded, yet he had a really hard time believing in those types of coincidences. For her to reach out to him like this, there must be more than meets the eye. Her husband was a very bright man. He had his own tech company. If she caught him, then he must have indulged in this affair for far too long. Like Icarus, he flew too close to the sun. Obviously, having another woman is the sun. Which, is that... After searching for 20 minutes, Steve found what he had been looking for. A cell phone. A hidden cell phone. A phone the husband, Patrick. Hello, this is Patrick? Was probably using exclusively for his cheating. Steve clicked his tongue the moment he browsed the phone's mail. Patrick was bright, alright. He was using cryptography in order to encode the mail he sent. And the person with whom he was conversing was doing the exact same thing. Wow! Which means that unless Steve could put his hand on the private key, he wouldn't be able to decipher any of the message's content. How paranoid do you have to be to do it like that? How did she still find out? How did he encrypt every single mail, but she still found out that he was cheating on her? He entered Patrick's study, found his laptop still in his bag next to the working desk, took it out and booted it up. No matter how intelligent Patrick was, he couldn't hide all traces of his infidelity, and furthermore he simply went to a certain extent where he felt confident that his wife wouldn't catch him. He never planned to hide it, even after his own death. After all, he never planned to die in the first place. Steve was certainly not as intelligent as him, but he could be considered stupid. He could even be considered stupid from society's point of view, but he still had something for himself. His concentration knew no equals. He could be holding a conversation while reading and still be able to write a thesis on Jungian archetypes. And while his memories might not be as great, there are still some things he planned to never forget. Like his hatred of Patrick even. Oh my god, did he have the hots for his sister or something? Why does he hate Patrick so much? Sorry, I can't hate Patrick. Okay, Patrick's a good guy. I love Patrick. Patrick's the best. Patrick's my best friend. When prompted to write a password, instead of typing all kinds of nonsense, sorry, I'm just shifting in my seat, Steve simply took out a USB drive. It was extremely easy to bypass the password of an operational system with the right tool. Well, even without tools, you probably could manage something. It's that easy. Steve searched for a bit and then inevitably found what he had been looking for. It was a custom-made program which encrypted and decrypted messages with its own private key, but there was a catch to it. That's what I thought. The private key changed every 24 hours. This meant that you could only read the messages that were sent on the same day. All the messages would become unreadable. Holy shit, that's pretty cool. There was only one message which was sent to and from Patrick's phone today, and in 15 minutes the private key would change. He still read the content of those 2 messages, even though he knew there was probably nothing interesting to be found there. Yet he couldn't be more wrong. There was one thing which was worth of all the efforts, one word: rocks. A diminutive for the name Roxanne, Steve concluded. He copied, then deleted the program from Patrick's laptop, putting the incriminating phone in his pocket and sneaking out the same way he sneaked in. The front door? The day after, he received a surprising call. "You must be mistaken. There's no way she would." "No, I'm certainly not. A month ago she made a change in her will, and now you're to be her daughter's guardian. If you accept, that is." "I accept," Steve said bluntly. "But that still doesn't add up. She would never trust him, he thought. No, he believed." "I don't know about that. She seemed very resolute. In any case, let's meet in order to take care of the paperwork." "Yes," he said in a somehow resolute tone. He was not cheerful, though, and he had yet to cry for his sister, horrible as he was. No, he would probably never cry for her. He had no emotions after all. He was a very strong, cool, cold man. But when he hung up for mysterious reasons, he struck a pose as though he had just won the lottery. "Yes! I won a little girl. What?" The next day, after searching the whole night on the internet, he started visiting apartments near the girl's school. Not creepy at all. "As you can see, it's very spacious. School, park, supermarket, everything is near. The saleswoman was about to go on and on about boring subjects, so Steve cut to the chase. "About the room we talked about over the phone?" Yes, it's right here." They walked to the room at the end of the corridor. "At first, I had a hard time understanding you over the phone. I hope I didn't make a mistake." The measurements. Steve took out the measuring tape mechanically, not caring about what she was saying. "Just the way you asked." 144, exactly like hers. The closet might not be in the right place, though. He was mumbling to himself. "Is everything all right?" The saleswoman seemed creeped out, not that he minded. "Yes, it will do. I'll take it." "Really? Wonderful. I don't know who you're doing this for, but you must really like her." "What makes you say that?" He looked at her with a blank, disinterested yet pressuring expression. How does she know that it's for a woman? No reason. No reason." "By the way." "What?" she asked nervously. "I saw there was furniture in the living room and stuff." We'll remove them by tomorrow, don't worry." "Unless you want to move in today?" "I'll buy them." What?" "I'll buy the whole lot." Yeah, it's gonna save some time. The day of the funeral eventually came. He had put his investigation on hold the day prior, deciding that reading on the subject of parenting would make for a better investment of his time. Anyway, he had already found the one he's been looking for. The only Roxanne that knew the husband and was not in her late 60s was the little girl's former teacher. He already knew most of her habits by now. He had stalked her for the past few days after all. He would follow through in due time. He had arrived late, not by mistake, but by choice. He didn't want to be around his relatives longer than necessary. When he entered the mortuary, his suspicions materialized themselves. They were all yapping about his way of living, his irresponsibility, his delinquency, his dismissal of the family structure. For the first time, he was happy his parents were dead, to not be the witness of this abhorrent sight. He walked to the caskets. His sister was in front of him, yet he didn't feel anything. That's what he believed, after all. He touched her casket with the little delicacy he had left. She had taken care of him for a long time. He never paid her back. His big sister. Wow. He opened his eyes. His sight then fell onto the other casket, her husband, Patrick. He had betrayed her and had insulted him. Yet Steve felt nothing. That's right, completely and utterly nothing. He turned around emotionlessly, and right before his eyes, a little girl was looking at him with big blue eyes filled to the brim with tears. She quickly cast her eyes down the moment they made eye contact. He didn't think, he didn't judge, he simply acted. His hand moved of its own will. Before he knew it, his hand was resting on her beautiful little head. She had the cheeks of her mother and the eyes of her father. There was no need for words, no need for consolation. After all, if it weren't for this curse, they would probably be one and the same. What? He walked away silently, knowing that this was the extent of what he could give her. The rest she will have to do on her own. He didn't stay for the ceremony, mostly because he didn't want to be late for the meeting where he would take charge of Eloise's custody, even though it was an hour later, but also because he noticed something rather annoying. He didn't have a car. He had burned his old one a couple of days ago in order to fake his death. Oh, okay. Since then he had mainly been stuck using taxis. He wanted to look dependable in front of the girl, if only a little. That's when he noticed his cousin's child leaving at the same time as him. He didn't know he was his cousin's child until the young man told him so himself. Steve noticed he had a car, so he thought, why not? At the point he was in, he had nothing to lose. He just bought the car off of him. It was an old, white 90s Taurus. Not well maintained at all. There was all sorts of trash on the back seats. Russ was eating the thing from all sides. And even with the doors closed, there was an awful putrid smell coming from it. To be completely honest, it looked more like a dumpster with 4 wheels. How much for the car? Steve asked, as though it was actually for sale. As though it was actually a drivable thing. I'm not selling it. It's a gift from my mother. His mother must hate him, Steve concluded. Rent then. Still, I can't. $500 for the month. And with this, he acquired a car 17 years older than the girl he was supposed to impress with it. The smell was so bad, even Steve had a hard time with it. And it was coming from a guy who had to deal with corpses on a regular basis. After aerating the thing for an hour, she won't even notice, Steve thought innocently. Oh. Sunday. Ugh. She looked at him with disgust. The first strong impression he gave her was disgust. It's not mine, it's a rental, he said casually in order to salvage the situation. Her reaction didn't affect him at all, though he had a mild desire to die on the spot. She eventually entered the car annoyingly, but as she was doing so, she did something quite unexpected. She put a collar over her nose. Was this some kind of trick? A life hack, maybe? If it meant not having to smell this odor, he would gladly oblige. And so he obliged. He was not making fun of her at all. He just didn't know better. What are you doing? Eloise asked, pouting. What's this? Is she perhaps angry at him because he was mimicking her? Was this some kind of ancient technique he didn't have the right to use? Nothing. Sorry, girl, but this technique is mine now. It was only 5 minutes later when he realized that this technique didn't do much good. Well, it helps a little bit, actually. Upon entering the apartment, the girl remarked, "It's clean." Look at this smirk! Yes! Steve strongly patted himself on the back. After all, he hadn't touched a single thing at his place in order to keep it sparkling clean. In fact, he had slept in a hotel room until then. He wanted the home to be equally theirs, both in terms of feeling and time. Thank you. He said as if he had anything to do with it. Maybe this will even out the moment of shame he had with the car earlier. Too clean. Did she perhaps like her things dirty rather than clean? No, that can't be. If it were the case, she would have enjoyed the ride home. Do you have kids? No. Shit, was that a trick question? He had answered instantly, but what if she wanted him to say yes? She was a kid, right? And she was now his from a legal standpoint at least, so maybe she was testing him or something? But she seemed unfazed and continued with a barrage of questions. A girlfriend? No. Shit, again he answered quickly and truthfully. He wanted to tell her the truth whenever he could, but what if it was a trick question again? Does she want him to have a girlfriend? Maybe it was only natural for him to have one. He can have a girlfriend now if that's what she really wants. But again she accepted his answer rather easily. Why? He asked her, wanting to know the result of a test she was giving him. She didn't answer, she just pointed at the wall. The face of an unknown woman was plastered on it, with 2 kids playing beside her. Probably a stock picture that was used to decorate the apartment. He might have paid for it, like everything else in the room. He trashed the ugly thing instantly, as if he could actually get rid of the evidence after being caught red-handed. He looked back her way. She was looking at him with distrust and shock. He had failed the test. This is the visual novel of all visual novels. It is very good. Again, the development team behind this made another visual novel that I've played before, hence why I picked this up. It's called Her Lie I Try to Believe. I played it on my channel. If you want more of this writing style and like this kind of... They're very good at like writing interesting characters, I think. It's something entirely different, but again, Her Lie I Try to Believe, it's a very good game. I think it's actually free to play. You can read through it yourself. I don't know if the Redux version is or something, but anyway. It's very enjoyable, isn't it? I am enjoying myself quite a lot reading through this now. He waited for her to fall asleep before undertaking his night out. He felt bad for forgetting to set up her stuff before she moved in. He was so obsessed with his investigation and learning about parenting that he had completely overlooked the most obvious thing. Right before leaving, though, he noticed something peculiar. She was sleeping without a blanket. What should he do? Was this a choice she made willingly, to sleep without a blanket on? Maybe that's how she likes to sleep, but what if she gets a cold? She doesn't look comfortable like this. He then remembered that his sister hated when he stood against her choices, even if what she was doing was completely wrong or illogical. He looked at Eloise for a time, not knowing what the right answer would be, but he couldn't stand seeing her like this. He put a blanket on her and then left, hoping she wouldn't be mad at him if she ever woke up. Oh, and that's why he removed it again before she woke up. He entered the house of his late sister for the second time, but this time through the front door. The old man from the meeting had given him the keys, even though it was Eloise's and not his. Compared to the first time, Steve visited each and every room with no clear intentions in mind. He was simply trying to picture what life had resembled in this household. Good things, like the drawings on the refrigerator, the happiness emanating from the pictures on the walls, and the living room, which had clearly seen its fill of cheerful events. Bad things, like his sister's workshop, where the trash bin is filled to the brim with destroyed sketches and tissues, the antidepressants lying next to her bed, and the minibar, which was clearly overused. Jesus. The ugly things, like the destroyed pictures of the couple in the trash, the self-made bed in Patrick's office, and all of the other clear indications of a toxic relationship. He knew things were not good between his sister and Patrick, but he never would have guessed that things could have been that bad. His sister was a designer, an artist, and by the looks of it, she hadn't produced a single thing for a while. Even worse, she had a depression, a drinking problem, and a cheater for a husband. Steve stayed in the doorway of his sister's workshop for a time, unmoved. He should have felt sorry for her, he should have felt anger towards him, should have felt sorrow at the very least, but he didn't. Instead, he did push-ups until his head was clear. Fucking based. Then he turned to the little girl's room. It was time for him to start working. They had spoiled her all right. Her room was filled with furniture, posters, decorations, a beautiful queen-sized bed, and even a cat. The night's going to be long. No, said the horse on the wall. When he finished, it was 6 in the morning. He returned to the living room where the sleeping beauty was lying. He took the blanket away from her to make sure she wouldn't be angry at him, sat on the 2-seat couch diagonally across from her, and fell asleep. Why can't you be happy for us? He's no good for you. I don't trust him. I don't want to hear this. You must believe me, he is a fake. You've always been like this. Every time I came home with a new boyfriend, you would try to scare him away, but not this time. It's different. How so? Steve had told him that Patrick was too good to be true. He had seen him being a bit too familiar with another woman. We're expecting, Steve. You better have good reasons for telling me this. Steve didn't know what to say. What he had seen was not proof of its own, and there was literally nothing he could say with the baby on its way. It's me or him. Then it's him, she flat out told him. Steve walked away by those words. Why are you going like this? His sister's tone was a mix of disappointment, confusion, and sadness. I'm leaving. What are you saying? You have no job and Mom is no longer there to support you. What are you gonna do on your own? I'm strong. I'll get by. You're weak and naive. You're not even a man yet. If I believe that I'm strong, then I am, remember? You're still going on with that bullshit? Then go. We'll see who's laughing when you return in 3 days crying. I'll show you. Soon you'll be forced to believe it too. How strong I am. Poor Steve. He had a hard life. His eyes snapped open. He was sat on a couch in a living room. He looked at the time. It was 6:30 a.m. It's only been 15 minutes since he fell asleep. Another dream about his past, about his sister. He's been dreaming of her recurrently since she died. He was not affected, though. He would not let himself be. Let's make some coffee, he decided spontaneously. Oh, and some hot chocolate, too. Okay. Guess it's just too harsh on serial killers. Serial killer is certainly not base material. Otherwise, he's hilarious. Okay, what's the difference between a serial killer or like a contract killer? What's the difference between a serial killer or someone in an active army that kills people? What is the actual difference? Is the only thing that counts the body count, or is it the intent? Or the psychological like stuff going on in a person? Like what's the definition for like a serial killer? I think serial killer, the definition is literally the body count, isn't it? He was reading on the couch, as this was his habit. His sister had taught him that knowledge was something that he should value, and so he does. When you look at it from that angle, everything constituting Steve's life seemed to be strongly linked to his sister. She was that much of an influence on him. But this book was no good. Parenting for Newbies. was an extremely infuriating read, as if every interaction between a parent and a child should be a psychological game, give the child an incentive to clean a room, positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, right, wrong. Steve didn't want that kind of relationship. She was a smart girl anyway. At her age, she would find the answers on her own. He would simply be there to accept it. While he was producing a negative review of the book in question in his head, he started reading something else. Fantasy should be a better way to understand a child's mind. That's when Eloise popped into the living room, looking a bit agitated. "Steve, it's the school, they want to talk to you." He took the phone from her, unconcerned. He was still reading about young wizards and whatnot. "Is this Mr. Miller?" "How are you, sir?" "Right." The little wizard's step-parents were annoyingly appalling. It's about Eloise's circumstances." "Right. Do you think she'll be able to join us tomorrow morning for homeroom? It's been 6 days since the last came to school." "I don't know." Steve wondered where the idea of witches flying on a broom came from. "Can I take it you will try to do something about it?" "Maybe. Who knows?" Who knows? But sir, it's important that she comes back quickly." "It's up to her." "That's right, it's up to her." Just tell her that her classmates miss her." "Sure." As if he would tell her such a lie. He hung up as if the call was over, gave the phone back to Eloise and kept on reading. But Eloise wanted to know the content of the call. After a bit of confusion, it was decided she would go back to school the very next day. She seemed happy about it. Then she asked to go to the supermarket. It was coincidentally what he had planned to do since the very beginning. Roxanne routinely went to the supermarket every day of the week at around 4:30. A perfect chance to interact with her. The only thing Steve felt bad about was that he had to use Eloise as a means to do so. "Why?" she asked him with visible bewilderment. She didn't understand why they should go at 4:30. "Because that time will allow for an opportunity to initiate interactions with the target," he said plainly. "The target?" Eloise said, her mouth agape. He had done it again. He had said something he probably shouldn't have, but he can't help it. He can't lie to her, of all people. 4:30 it is then. But maybe he'll have to make some exceptions from now on. Okay, let's see. It's legalized killing if you're in the military. Who gives you the right to kill another person? Is it the state? Does the state have the right to give you the right to kill another person? It's the fact that a soldier kills only when demanded by his nation or something. Doesn't kill because he wants to. Or you're making a broad assumption there, Albarazuko. Some people in the army kill because they want to do so, I'm sure. A serial killer wants to kill, and he does. A contract killer kills because he gets monetary compensation, but it's his contractor who is the murderer. And the contractor is the tool for the murder. See, that's an interesting difference already. Soldiers are a mixed bag, but mostly they kill for a justifiable reason, while the others don't. Weber's monopoly on violence, etc., etc. This Sociology 101. I've never really thought about that, to be honest. Like the difference in killing intent and stuff. And what if we have a situation of someone like a vigilante killing bad people, killing other killers or something? Yeah, if you're a serial killer that kills other killers, does this make the right wrong or the wrong right? Or interesting, isn't it? Like it's like I'm 12 and this is very deep. He was persistently looking at the end of the aisle towards the back of the supermarket. He had purposely chosen that aisle because the vegan section was situated right in front of it, and obviously she was vegan. Obviously, soon she should appear in his field of view. All he had to do was stall for time. And there she was, a beautiful woman, probably a couple of years younger than him. In any other circumstance, he would have found her quite attractive, but she had hurt his sister, one way or the other, and she had to pay for it. He sent Eloise on a wild goose chase and initialized the perfect scenario in order to interact with her. He bumped into her, bam, apologizing way too many times until Eloise returned to his side. He then used the girl's unfortunate situation as a pretext to cross the boundaries of new acquaintances. Eloise was visibly uncomfortable about the whole situation, and Roxanne noticed it, but Steve couldn't let her leave yet. He needed some insurance. But before you go, I have a favor to ask of you, if you don't mind. A favor? He had clearly taken her by surprise. Good. You see? Steve walked further away from Eloise, telling Roxanne to follow him with his eyes. Since her parents died, she's been extremely depressed, and while I've been doing everything I can to make her feel comfortable, she doesn't trust me yet. But it's only fair. I mean, we haven't seen each other since she was 8 months old, so I'm kind of a stranger to her. I see. She looked receptive to what he was saying. She was empathizing with him. Well, with her eyes at the very least. Was she a good actress?
He couldn't gauge her true personality from what she had gathered yet. She must have felt guilty herself, right? Because she was fucking the dad, most likely. And then they die. And now the girl is left alone. Did he just imply that all vegans are evil cheaters? Maybe. So I was thinking, since you personally know her, and she seems to appreciate you, maybe you could one day sometime look after her for an hour or so? If you have the time, that is. I'm not so sure. Please, think about it. It would be a one-time thing, just to show her there are still people caring about her. She's been so down lately. I understand. If the opportunity arises, then sure, why not? Fantastic. Bingo. This is what he needed to develop some kind of relationship with her. This should serve him well in the near future. Roxanne bid them farewell and walked away further down the alley. The muscles on Steve's face, which were rarely ever contracted, loosened up quite a bit. Now all he has to do is find some more clues. She hates the girl? You think so? Because... Oh, you think the parents were together because of Eloise? That's why he didn't leave the wife? And that's why she hates the girl? And he found out that she actually hates her? And that's why he actually killed her or something? He was driving around town. The night had just settled in. Though he didn't like to leave Eloise alone in the apartment, she had gone to sleep rather early. So it should be alright as long as he does this quickly. Furthermore, today was the only time where he could really do this. Today was the day his sister died a week ago. A Monday. He planned on visiting the restaurant they dined in, allowing him to speak to Monday's regulars and workers. He was bound to find something there, or so his experience was telling him. Huh? He was searching in his pocket, but he couldn't find a note he took of the restaurant's address. Then he remembered something. He had trashed a folded piece of paper earlier that day, thinking nothing of it. He sighed. Sometimes his own clumsiness surprised him. Or maybe it was the simple fact that he had slept only 15 minutes in the last 48 hours. He stopped at a coffee shop, bought a plain black coffee, used the Wi-Fi, then went on his way. At the very least, it was not difficult to find data on the accident on the internet. He went to the restaurant first. He returned to his car with 2 pieces of information which he didn't have an hour ago. First, his sister was not drunk. Her husband was, but not her. Supposedly, she was the one who ordered the wine, though, at least that's what the waiter told Steve. 2 bottles of wine had been served, yet she had not touched her glass once. Did she drug him? She drugged him. It was like a murder-suicide. The second piece of information was even more interesting. A young woman had been spotted outside of the restaurant around the time the couple were dining. Her features strongly resembled those of Roxanne. Oh, Jesus. It's getting dirty now. What's even more suspicious is the fact that she never entered the restaurant. She was simply pacing around the establishment for no apparent purpose. This was very incriminating indeed. At least from Steve's perspective, there were too many coincidences surrounding Roxanne's behavior for her to be completely innocent. Let's take a look at the place they died then. It was close to the restaurant, really close, a minute or 2 at most. Steve's sister, Claire, was the driver. She was driving faster than the speed limit for whatever reason, so much so that she didn't even stop at a red light. Was she in an argument with her husband, or was her husband so drunk that he had done or said something that took her attention away? In any event, an upcoming car came to her left and she logically tried to dodge it. By doing so, they crashed in a concrete wall at an alluring speed. Steve could look at the concrete wall for hours on end, but he would never find an answer there. There was nothing left of the accident after all, maybe except for the wall. It was more of a question of curiosity at this point. Still, lots of scenarios popped into his mind. There are many ways to tinker with a car. Hell, nowadays a lot of features in cars is software based. One only needs to hack into the software to manipulate most of the car at will. Well, Steve didn't actually think Roxanne could have hacked the car, but loosen or cut things inside it. Sure. Oh shit. Did she actively kill them? He looked at his watch. It was close to midnight. He had taken more time than planned. If he's quick enough, though, should have a good 6 hours of sleep today. Should be enough to recuperate from the hours he'd wasted. But right before entering his car, his eyes locked on a small electronics store. He then remembered the conversation he had with Eloise earlier during dinner. I know it sounds weird, but whenever I ate dinner with Mom and Dad, we always had the television running in the background. At first I thought it was bothersome, but now I miss it somehow. He looked back at his watch, but it was still very much midnight. The stores close at around 5 PM normally, right? His night might be longer than he first anticipated. Oh god, did he steal a television? Oh. Imagine being self-aware you're an NPC in a VN. Just see the same MC passing you by and repeating events over and over because the player can't find the golden route and keeps resetting. There must be a visual novel about this somewhere. I'm sure of it. A very meta one. What are you doing here? It's my house. It's our house, and it's been more than a year since you last came. His sister was angry at him. She always seemed angry at him. I'll use the microwave, alright? He had a cup noodle in his bag. He'd been living on those for a while now. You going to eat that thing? You should have called. I'd have prepared something for you. That's alright, don't worry about it. He filled a cup with water, putting it in the microwave. You've changed. You don't look happy. You've always been like this. You don't remember much if you think you've always been this way. What can I say? The spell worked. No, it failed. The microwave, that was, like, of course, something we don't know about yet. The spell, like, Eloise's mother must have said something to him. Something like, oh, their parents are dead, right? So their parents must have died very early and she must have taken care of him. And she most likely told him, you need to be strong. Don't let anything phase you. Always be the best version that you can be or something. I don't know. Something along these lines, right? And that's when he turned the switch to be an incredibly based artist. The microwave beeped 3 times. Steve took the cup out, fetched the fork from the usual drawer without even asking, then finally looked at all the changes around him. The house of his parents had now become the house of his sister. Then he saw the cradle in the middle of the living room. Is that your kid? He walked towards it. Yes, and you didn't even come for her baptism. I put you down as a godfather, you know. Yeah, sorry about that. Had other things to do. He made eye contact with the baby. Man, she's rather cute for a baby. What are you talking about? All babies are cute. Lies. Not all babies are cute. Yeah, no. He took a noodle out of the cup, blew in it a couple of times, and gave it to the baby. You don't do that. What are you doing? Don't feed my baby that shit. How old is she now? Is that like when she was 8 months old? Well, with 8 months, she most likely could have eaten that noodle. I don't think she likes it. She made a weird smile after all. Steve, I need to talk to you. What is it? I know it sounds ridiculous, but I need to know. Are you with the mob? What do you know about that? What? Shit. He said something he shouldn't. You're not serious, are you? Now she was really angry. Patrick told me you were doing shady stuff, but I couldn't believe him. I wouldn't. But now you're telling me it's the truth? Yeah. You need to stop what you're doing. Now it's dangerous. It doesn't work like that. They would kill him. He would kill him. You can live with us. We can work something out. Sorry, but no. I just came here to give you this. Gave her a paper. A paper which he had signed, claiming that he gave up his half of his parents' house. What are you talking about? This is yours too. I can't accept this. Yes, you can. I must leave now. He threw the empty cup in the trash and walked towards the front door. Wait, if you can do this for me, at least do it for her. She pointed to the cradle where the baby girl lay. She needs you. You're a godfather. She needs someone reliable that isn't me or Patrick. Sorry, but you know I'm not cut out for this. I believe in you, right? Believe. I know you can do this. No, you don't. He opened the front door nonchalantly. If you take another step, then I don't want to see you again. You hear me? For someone, like, she must know that he takes everything very literally. And this is the second time she tells him to leave? Is she, like, she's either very malicious or dense. He took that step. I hate you. I hate what you've become. You've taken my brother away from me. I didn't take him away. I killed him. Can I help you, sir? Yeah, I'm looking for a phone. Well, you're at the right place, the salesman said with a humorous tone as if he was actually clever. What kind of features are you looking for exactly? Don't know. One you can call and write with? He felt bad for lying to the girl. Well, he didn't feel bad, but he didn't like lying to her nonetheless. Yeah, that's a better way to put it. Huh, every phone has this feature, you know? How about the processor? Do you want a hexacore, an octa-core? Right. Anyway, he had told her he didn't own a phone when in fact he did. A phone for work, a phone he should have trashed a long time ago, but who knows when he might need it. For now, he mainly used it for taking pictures. And space? 32 gigabytes? 64? Sure. The thing is, he didn't really like technology, even though he was good with it. He was more of an analog guy. Front and rear camera, right? No problem. In any case, you should stop messing around with that guy and get on with his purchase. Here you go, anything else? Yeah, can you put that thing on the back shelf and give me that one over there instead? Huh? You mean the flip phone? Yeah, the new model right there, in pink. Sure. The clerk said while looking at him with revulsion. Steve was used to it though. The phone Eloise was using was cheap and kind of old. With the one he was buying, she would have 3 times more space and almost 4 times more power. He was looking forward to seeing her reaction. He was looking forward to seeing her smile. I want the hardcore. And then the shopkeeper was confused. He looked at the phone in his hand, a bit disgusted. She didn't want it. Worse, she told him that he should use it. A pink smartphone. He didn't like anything in that sentence. Even the A was annoying. The most narcissistic letter in the alphabet. The first one. He was in a foul mood. He had made her cry. He was the worst. On the news, they were talking about the possibility that his sister's accident was not an accident at all, that it was a murder. Obviously, he already knew about it, not because of his own investigation, but simply because the cops had reached out to him a couple of days ago. They had reached out to him in order to search the house. He complied, understanding what it meant, understanding that there was more to his sister's accident than meets the eye. That house had nothing in anyway, so he didn't care if the cops searched it. The only thing that could link Roxanne to that house was with Steve. In other words, Patrick's cell phone. So unless Steve overlooked something, he should still be the only one with the knowledge that Roxanne had an affair with his sister's husband. So he knew all about the possible murder, yet he couldn't shut down the television when Eloise pled for it. How selfish. But he just couldn't take that chance. Maybe they had some information he didn't have. Maybe they had a suspect he didn't even know about. Maybe, but no. He knew all too well that the police wouldn't divulge what they had found unless they'd hit a wall. It will only be a matter of time before they start suspecting him too. No, they already were. It was the police after all, not some stupid disorganized group. He'd have to be careful from now on. He thought this, but he was probably in the last place where he could seriously think that. Because there was a car in front of him. That car. Completely, utterly, brutally destroyed. There was blood everywhere inside the thing. The front doors on each side were pretty much ripped apart and the smell of death lingered in the air. He grits his teeth. He wasn't feeling anything. He wasn't feeling anything. He wasn't feeling anything. He wanted to smoke badly, but realized he had stopped smoking 2 weeks ago, the moment he had learned he was in charge of Eloise's custody. How did he find the car? Well, the moment the police proclaimed the incident might have been a murder was a good indication of when they were done investigating it. He only had to look in one of the many garages associated with the cops to easily stumble upon it. If he didn't do this tonight, though, he would have to search around town in scrapyards, and that would have proven to be difficult of a task even for him. There was not much he could do with it, though. He could look around for clues, but most of them must have been destroyed alongside the front of the vehicle. Well, it's not like he came here just to sightsee anyway. He had found one of the reasons behind the possible murder statement. There were light cuts on the brake pipes. Nothing too fancy or conspicuous, only something that would make the pipes leak over a medium period of time. The news had talked about this, and only this, but Steve thought there had to be something more, something else. That's why he was there. After all, it didn't make any sense. What were the chances that the brakes had stopped working at the red light of all places? How could they stop working with such perfect timing? Should have been more gradual. Should have taken more time. But then again, there were still chances, and there were a lot of things he didn't know about. Life could be extremely illogical and mysterious sometimes, so he had to accept it, even if he didn't want to. That was all he could do for now. He decided not to linger around the place any longer. He had to prepare Eloise's lunch for tomorrow. He wanted to apologize, so he thought he would prepare what seemed to be her favorite meal, lasagna. Oh, is that when she gave him back the lunch and asked for money instead? Oof, that must have hurt. So wait, that's Mark. Who was Mark? Mark was the Shrek, right? So you're the one they sent me for the job. Mark looked at Steve with truthful disdain. Yes. Mark walked over to Steve, his eyes piercing the depths of his soul. Sorry, it's getting very late. Soon his breath was rudely scratching Steve's face, his dark eyes still very much locked onto Steve's eyes. He had long since transgressed the boundaries of human courtesy. He was waiting for Steve to falter. He was waiting for Steve to show him what he was made of. Steve lost. Steve looked away, if only for an instant. It was all the time it took for Mark to punch him in the face. You've sent me a useless brat! Steve was on the floor, his mouth bleeding. I don't know how you did fool those geezers, but you're not fooling anyone here. Fucking baby! Steve felt anger. He felt anger until he remembered that in reality he didn't feel anything. He got up from his disgraceful position, returned his expressionless eyes on Mark and stayed silent. Tch, I guess we'll find out if you crack or break. If you break, I might actually find a use for you. If you crack though, you're as good as... If you break? Or if you break, I might actually find a use for you. If you crack though, you're as good as dead, capischke? Sure. And no need to tell you that you won't be the only one. Now come, you have a man to kill. You have a lot of bourbon to swallow. Markiplier is a hard ass. Good old Markiplier. The ogre. Here you go. He gave the keys back to the rightful owner. He didn't want to see that car anymore. After all, Eloise hated it. You sure? You still have 2 weeks with it, you know? Don't worry about it. Should have done this a long time ago. In fact, you should have dumped it in a river or something. He turned around to walk away, but a woman came out of the young man's house. It was his mother, by that same logic, Steve's cousin. God, she was around the same age as him. A fat, annoying woman he had planned on never seeing again. To think they played doctor together at some point. What? That's not like a... Thanks for that information. What do you think you're doing taking my child's car like that? He had to take the bus to go to school. And what was your idea of giving him so much money anyway? He's supposed to learn how to be responsible. What if you used that money to buy drugs, huh? It's been 15 years since I last saw you, and you're still the same useless bum. She was worse than before. Having a kid obviously made her even more delusional. The type of person who thinks they can push their ideology on you for stupid reasons like think of the children, when they are clearly simply pushing forward their own narcissistic agenda. Why are you looking at me like that? You're clearly not thinking of others. Mom, that's alright, let him leave. He thanked the kid in his head, then started walking away. Wait, you're forgetting something. I think it's your lunch. That's right. She had refused it earlier. She was still angry at him. She had every right to be. Keep it. Thanks. Hey Mom, it's lasagna. I know how much you like it. Oh, it'll go perfectly well with the beef from yesterday. Steve heard this, then stopped abruptly. To think the love he poured, no, sorry, the time he poured on Eloise's lunch would be wasted on this monstrous woman. He would have none of that. He turned around and said, sorry, but I think I'll keep it after... Bump. She had closed the door on him. Guess it can't be helped. Oh, it has a can't be helped moment. Nice. After walking to the first car dealership he could find, he showed a picture of the old Taurus car he just got rid of the salesman, saying, I want the opposite. So he ended up with a black electric sports car. It had cost quite a lot, and the money he was about to use in order to pay for it wasn't exactly clean. But he understood Eloise's feelings. It was embarrassing driving around in a dumpster, alright? Any kid, no, anyone would feel that way. He wanted her to feel comfortable. He wanted her to find him reliable, so he did what was necessary, even if it meant looking like he was in his midlife crisis. He drove directly to Eloise's school, even though he was early. He was always early, but not to that extent. At the very least, this would leave him with enough time to write her a review about the last book he read. That's what she meant when she said meaningful, right? School eventually ended. He noticed her right away with her big sad blue eyes and a large pink backpack. But she didn't notice him. It was only natural. After all, he was no longer that atrocious white dump. He wanted to get out and wave at her. She looked lonely and kind of lost, but his experience told him otherwise. It had happened one time in the past that Steve's father came to school in order to pick Steve's sister, Claire, up. He had waited outside of his car and waved at her innocently when he saw her. Something that should have been trivial was actually very insensitive, at least from his sister's perspective. Baby always loves when I pick her up from kindergarten. For kids that age, this association from parents' dependency was very important, and that night she let everyone in the family know how infuriated she was, how humiliated she felt. Steve still had goosebumps whenever he thought about his sister's bursts of anger. So in order not to make the same mistake as his poor father, Steve simply kept looking at Eloise until she realized on her own. She did, 30 minutes later. She entered the car shyly, asked him why he didn't come see her, and then fell silent after hearing his answer. This was the time for an apology. He didn't like those times. He was no good with those times. What kind of face should he make? What about his tone? Would she believe him? Would she pardon him? She was about to say something, but before she had the time to speak, before she had the time to take responsibility for his immaturity, he instinctively put his hand on her head, and then he apologized, openly, truthfully, as an adult should. She cried. He made her cry again. That was another reason he didn't like these times. He was the worst. He had no words for her. She had taken all of them away from him the moment he saw tears in her eyes. He was weak, despite what he tried to believe. The bittersweet atmosphere inside the vehicle changed the moment Steve noticed the police car in his mirror. They had parked behind him. Why did they stop? What did they want from them? Were they really policemen? Maybe Mark had sent them through Steve's scheme. Had seen through Steve's scheme and had tracked them down here. Steve had used the police trick once in order to kill a rival hitman by surprise. Sure, it was night at the time, and not in front of an elementary school, but all the more to be on his toes. He reached ever so delicately to the gun under his seat while fixating on his side mirror with great apprehension. Eloise's uneven breathing soon came to his ears. He tried to calm her down with words, but it was hopeless in this kind of situation. She probably had a glimpse of the gun in his hand at this point. Fortunately, it was a false alarm. The school had called the cops because of how suspicious he looked. He was sent back with a simple warning. Again, his actions were too spontaneous and immature. If he continued on like this, he would have to face the consequences. Normally, though, he wouldn't have cared. He wouldn't have cared because he deserves it. But then Eloise said something strange, yet obvious. But what if something happens to you? What will they do to me? Send me to an orphanage? I don't want that. That's right. He had not thought about that. He was selfish, thinking his actions would only affect him, but that was no longer the case. Was that ever the case? He will have to be careful from now on. What are you doing here? I'm here to see my niece. You're here to see shit! Patrick stepped outside, half closing the door behind him. I just want to see her. There's no need to talk or anything. He hears laughter coming from inside the house. You hear that? It's the sound of my wife and my kid playing together. They are happy. The moment you show them this sad little mug of yours, they won't be happy anymore. Click, click. Patrick was playing with his lighter like always. This irritated Steve. It's my sister. And she doesn't want to see you anymore. I got to admit, first I thought I would have to find a way to get rid of you, but you did it on your own. Thanks a lot, buddy. Don't call me that. What, buddy? You seemed to like it before, though. He did, once, but that was before Patrick showed his true colors, when Steve was naive and weak. You know I always hated you, right? But it's nothing personal, you've just always been in the way. I hate you too. That's the spirit. Honey, who is it? Steve's sister was shouting from somewhere in the house. No one! He answered happily, then locked eyes with Steve. Right? No one. Steve planned to interject, but... Dad, look what I made! A little girl popped behind Patrick. Oh, let me see. Patrick turned towards her, entered the house, and closed the door behind him. Steve was glad. He had his phone in his hand, a picture of the little girl inside it. Damn. It's kind of sad. That is kind of sad. No more violence, no more outings during the night, he grumbled to himself while walking down the school's corridor. She told him to do those things, and he knew she was right. He felt especially conflicted now that he was aware that his actions could have negative repercussions on her. That's why he was walking down this corridor, because this would be the last risk he would take. After that, if he doesn't find anything, he leave this obsession alone. He had to. He knew Roxanne was at the exit near the back of the school because she always went there right before her class. She went there to smoke, though she's what people call a casual smoker. He opened the door and there she was. Huh? Steve? She hid her hands behind her back as if she could hide the fact that she was smoking, even though a line of smoke was rising from behind her. What are you doing here? Roxanne, what a pleasant surprise. To tell you the truth, I had to take a breath of fresh air. I have a job interview in like 5 minutes, so... What? Here? Yeah! Though he plans to botch it royally, he knew Eloise would be devastated if he worked where she's supposed to grow out of adult's dependency. He understood that he should find a job. It was important in order to live a normal life, but he also understood that being perceptive and sensitive to her needs was even more important. That's great. Is it for the janitor job? One of them quit on us 2 days ago after some kids threw spoiled milk at him. Yes, janitor job. What a sad job, he thought. Do they even get compensated with money? No, they don't. By the way, you remember about the favor I asked you? Are you still up for it? Huh? Yeah, sure. When would that be? Tonight. Tonight? That's... He knew she had nothing going on. She would probably go buy vegan sausages like she always does, eating all alone in her apartment while watching some cartoons. Well, if that's the only thing she does with these vegan sausages. Oh, please, I know who you want. Alright, fine, but I won't forget that, Dab. I'm a stingy person, you know? She said in a teasing manner. I know that pretty well, actually. With all her coupons. What? I said you're too hard on yourself. Why don't we exchange phone numbers then? Sure. She was starting to look at him a bit weird. It was time to retreat. His real personality was starting to rear its ugly head. Right in the middle of exchanging numbers, though, the bell rang. I got to go, she said hurriedly. 5:30, alright? I'll mail you the address. Right. Wait, what is it? You should probably trash it before going, Steve said, looking at her hands. Oh! She noticed the cigarette still hanging between her fingers and dropped it in surprise. Her face then flushed red. Thanks. And just like that, she went away. Good. He was glad it went so smoothly. Now it was time for him to go to his interview and fail it miserably. That was close. He almost had it, even by looking as unreliable as he could, which didn't take much, obviously. But they eventually let him go when he started talking about how cute the teachers were. His plan to make a harem with some of them. Telling bullshit with a straight face was one of his fortes. He was glad it served him well for once, though he felt like shit right afterward. Roxanne was late, annoyingly late, and when she did arrive, she burst inside the apartment with an overly jovial tone, babying Eloise with comforting words and whatnot. Steve didn't like that. Leaving Eloise alone with her was very difficult for him. It was kind of paradoxical, since he was the one who asked for her help, but it was a necessary evil. He could no longer go out during the night, and it was the best way he could find to ensure that Roxanne wouldn't pop up randomly while still having someone looking after Eloise. Also, maybe Eloise and Roxanne's conversation would be of use to him. Now, if you'll excuse me, and sweetheart, he looked at Eloise with deliberate changes in his persona. Stay strong, alright? Try to survive for an hour with that witch, he wanted to tell her before restraining himself. Which is exactly what she got out of it. Mwah, I love that. Very nice relationship between these two characters. Now, time to go investigate her apartment. He had an earbud in his ear, eavesdropping on the conversation all the while searching Roxanne's apartment. He had bugged his dining room an hour earlier for this exact purpose. He thought Roxanne might have a slip-up, but... What were we talking about again? Right, I remember. Boys! He was annoyed. The conversation was irrelevant, but most of all, Roxanne was actually trying to befriend Eloise, and that, of course, was not good. Even though he still wasn't certain of a role in his sister's death, or even in his sister's pain, he had a hard time trusting her, a hard time liking her, and since he knew Eloise didn't particularly like her either, he thought it was alright. I guess I underestimated that witch, he said to no one in particular. He continued his search, but to no avail. It was only natural, though. She wouldn't have kept something as incriminating as the cell phone she used to contract Patrick with, and unless she was stupid enough to keep a memento of him somewhere, the search would serve no purpose. Maybe that's what Steve wanted all along, the confirmation that he couldn't pin his sister's death or sadness on Roxanne. The pieces of information he had at the moment concerning Roxanne were as follows. 1. Roxanne might have had an illicit relationship with the husband of his sister. Steve was around 90% sure of it. It was not 100, though, not until he could find something that would directly link Roxanne and Patrick together. 2. Steve's sister's death was a murder, not an accident, 80%. 3. The cops had yet to find the culprit behind it, fact. 4. Roxanne might have been around the restaurant during the time of the possible murder, 60%. 5. The breaks were cut between the time his sister dined with her husband and the time they left the restaurant, fact. 6. Roxanne is actually the killer in that said murder, 50%. Under normal circumstances, those numbers would have been more than enough for Steve to act. In fact, being suspicious that Roxanne was the source of his sister's sorrow and depression alone would have probably been all he needed. But now, even if he were 90% sure that she had killed his sister, hell, 100% sure, he might not be able to do anything. He couldn't put Eloise's life in jeopardy for something as stupid as revenge. Yes, stupid. Revenge is stupid. He had to keep telling himself that, else. Eloise's voice then came to his ears. I guess so, thanks. You're welcome. He left Roxanne's apartment, extremely irritated. It was a mistake. He didn't want to have anything to do with her. He could not support her presence around him any longer, but instead he now had a date with her of all things. At the very least, he was able to convince Eloise to come with them. Else he didn't know what he would do to her. He had killed before. In fact, he had killed a lot of bad guys, that is. And since he was the kind of man who acted on impulses, and he was pretty sure Roxanne had something to do with his sister's death, killing her was very tempting indeed. The moment Roxanne left, Steve started searching around his apartment for any evidence of tampering. This was the other reason why he had invited her to babysit Eloise. It was bait, because if she really was the culprit behind his sister's death, then there were a lot of chances that she would try to frame him for it. It was only logical. Most of the time, close friends or relatives are actually the one behind the murder. If she had in her possession the knife that cut the brakes or something else that could be linked to the murder, all she had to do was to drop it somewhere around the apartment and then wait for the police to investigate. She dropped the lighter underneath the bed. She tried to frame him, but Eloise found it and decided against it. Hell, she could even call him herself with slight suspicions as an excuse. But there was nothing that he could find at least. Here was more proof that he was wrong after all. It's time to give up, he finally concluded. What are you looking at? Nothing. Steve closed his cell phone in a hurry. Was that a little girl? Yeah, he said vaguely. She was cute, so I took a picture of her. It was a lie. She was his niece, but he couldn't possibly say that to him. He preferred to look like a pervert than to tell him the truth. The truth was dangerous. Ha! I knew you were a sick little bastard, but not that sick, Mark said in a joking manner. He didn't really care. It was probably the only thing Steve liked about him. The fact that he didn't categorize evil by some weak, disproportionate standards. He was evil, he knew it, and he accepted it. He was not discriminating against others of his kind, because he knew he was no better than them. That was the kind of demon Mark was. So who's the target? Steve asked, trying to change the subject. A fucking idiot who took off with one of our girls. Again? The oldest story in the world. When it comes to women, men become fucking idiots. Is that so? Anyway, small talk is over. We need to hurry. I have a birthday party in 24 hours. I don't want to make the kid wait. Sure. Oh, and Greg? He looked at Steve with his usual look of disdain. Let's try to do it cleanly this time. Greg? Why did he call him Greg? Is that his code name? Steve, codename Greg. Very creative. Friday came. While the girl was at school, Steve took that opportunity to look for a job. Life started to look a bit more ordinary now that he was no longer going out during the night. He was even sleeping 8 hours a day, which surprised him immensely. He was kind of scared that this would turn him into someone lazy, actually. His search was somehow fruitful. All the jobs he applied for were not appealing in the least, but he guessed it was the price to pay for a normal, uneventful life. He didn't care. If it meant protecting her, then he would gladly sacrifice his old habits for it. Right, he no longer yearned for revenge. He had the strength to let it go. He believed he had. Later that day, while he was reading on his couch and Eloise was in the shower, someone knocked on the door. This was the first time it had happened, someone unexpectedly knocking on her door, that is. Steve tensed up. He unconsciously reached underneath the couch, but his hand only grasped air. That's right, he had stopped hiding his guns around the house. No more violence. He walked to the door with forced nonchalance and opened it without looking through the peeping hole. People act like this normally, right? Not stressed or apprehensive, simply careless and without any worries. A man in his mid-50s was waiting on the other side of the door, a stern expression on his face. This was underwhelming, to say the least. Yes? I know it's there somewhere. You gotta get rid of that thing. What is? This man was not making any sense. Don't act innocent. You're cat. What else? You must be making a mistake. There's no such a thing here. Then what is this right there? The cat, as if understanding they were talking about her, came out of her hiding and started rubbing her side on Steve's leg affectionately. Shit. I don't know, $100 bill maybe? He took out a bill from his pocket and tried to hide the cat from the annoying man by superposing it on top of her. Are you trying to bribe me? That thing has been crying the whole day. Everyone knows about it by now. So he would have been bribed if people didn't know about it. Steve started to get really annoyed by this loser. A threat would probably work best in the situation. You're sure you want to go there, old man? What's going on, Steve? His heart skipped a beat. Eloise was witnessing the scene. Her eyes showed distress. She was understanding what was going on. Shit, he didn't want her to see this. Not after telling her about the spell. If she believed it, then obviously everyone would. They had to. It was how this world worked, after all. You get rid of that thing, or you get out of the apartment. There's a no animal policy here, and if we start making exceptions now, the building will soon be overrun by those things. If it weren't for that promise, he could have shut this man's disrespectful mouth a long time ago. But Eloise was looking at them. There's no way he could do this. That's not how adults actually solve things, right? He took one giant breath and then let go of the act. He accepted that he would move out by the end of next week. It was either that or get rid of the animal. But obviously that was not an option. He kind of enjoyed looking at the little thing. And he, most of all, enjoyed Eloise's smile. But all of this was starting to cost him a lot. Breaking the lease, moving again, the new car, the new cell phone, paying for Eloise's stuff. He was now strongly hoping that one of the jobs he had applied for would call him quickly. What is it? Nothing. Is it those boys again? He didn't want to say it. He knew his sister would try to defend him, but that would only make matters worse. If there's nothing, then why are you crying? Because I'm weak. You cry because you're weak? Yes. That's not true. You're strong. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. You smile all the time, you help others without thinking about compensation, and you take into consideration feelings of others as well as your own. That's called strength. This is not strength. This looks more like I'm a girl or something. Girl? You really think that? Yeah. Then Steve, what does it mean for you to be strong? He wasn't sure. He always had this image in his head though, an image of gangsters in the movies who don't smile, who never show their emotions. They are strong. I think being strong would mean to be able to protect you at least. That's very sweet, but I don't need protection, you know? You shouldn't worry about such a thing. She tried to cheer him up, but this wasn't what he wanted to hear. She always tried to look tough in front of him, but he knew better than anyone that she needed someone to look after her. Alright, Steve, she finally added, seeing how distressed he was. I'll teach you a spell to become stronger. Here we go. It's getting spelled out for us now, literally. Saturday. Let him go. She'll have more fun with a friend. Ugh. Steve watched as Eloise and her friend ran away. They had left him all alone with Roxanne. So, what do we see? She was close to him. Too close. Her body fragrance was assaulting his nostril. She was grabbing at his arm as would a young girl in love. What was up with that woman? He never showed her any form of affection. She couldn't possibly be interested in him. She must have other motives. He was cautious of her. Maybe too cautious. What if she was simply lonely? Maybe she too was heartbroken about everything that happened. He knew she had little to no friends, and the closest thing she had to her family was her dog. Now that he thought about it, wasn't he the one who knew her better than anybody else? Where was her dog when he broke in? No. What was he thinking? It was not the time to be compassionate for his enemy. He'll never approve of her. Never. For now, though, he should find a way to be hated by her. Let's go see this, he said stoically, while pointing at the worst post in the whole theater. Even he was extremely repulsed by it. You want to see this? She said, her mouth hanging open. You're kidding, right? She was probably waiting for the joke to come. She stopped waiting when he bought a ticket for the both of them. By the way, we're going Dutch on this. Couldn't possibly pay for her. It would be too gentlemanly of him. You mean I got to actually pay to see the thing? Jesus Christ. In the theater room, he started chatting, talking about this and that. She started chatting, rather. Talking about this and that. He didn't listen to him. He didn't answer her. He couldn't. She might get the wrong idea if he had. The cherry on the cake, though, was to fall asleep after the first 5 minutes of the movie. Obviously, Steve was not good at sleeping, so his only option was to fake. But try faking to be asleep for an hour and a half in a noisy theater next to a noisy person. This was probably his hardest challenge yet. That hour and a half was a true suffering for the both of them. He had sacrificed himself. He only wished Eloise wouldn't mess his plan up afterwards. But she did. When Eloise heard of how Steve had treated Roxanne, she completely lost it. So much so that she spontaneously invited her for dinner, probably to make Steve pay for his sins. He played for absolution in his mind, anything to run away from the situation. Instead of saving him though, Eloise's friend tried to escape this disaster on her own. I guess I'm going to go now, she said as though she had nothing to do with all of this, but Steve knew Eloise would have never thought of such a plan on her own. She was too honest for that. Only a third party would corrupt her like this. Unforgivable. She had to pay. Emily, right? Would you do us the honor of dining with us tonight? You won't escape that easily, he laughed in his head as would a cheap villain. Can't wait for the plot twist to become a plot bundle. Your point of view is going to make things even more confusing. I fully agree. It's gonna be a long stream today. I said I would finish this today. We're not even done with his perspective yet. I assume hers will be shorter. Gah. He was the only one to suffer though. The four of them made dinner together. Well, it was more him cutting and stirring the pan, the two girls washing and peeling, and Roxanne commanding and giving cues. He didn't want that at all. At least he didn't want Roxanne to participate. What if she poisoned the food while he was not looking? What if she was a poor cook? It was bad enough that they had to eat vegan. She ruined the whole dinner on top of it. He would be extremely disappointed. And Eloise would be disappointed too. And since Eloise would be disappointed, then obviously he would be even more disappointed. But Roxanne was good. Better than him at least. Who was not scared to give her credit. He had his eyes fixed on her during the whole cooking process, just in case. Yet she was everything but suspicious. She was not only great with food, but also with kids. She was a teacher, after all. He saw in her eyes that she clearly cared for the two girls. They laughed together, the three of them. He looked at them with a feeling of longing, thinking how great it would be if only another circumstance would have brought them all together. If he wasn't careful, however, he would start actually enjoying himself. But that was something he couldn't give in to. That's the one thing he wouldn't indulge in. After all, he had too much respect for his sister to do that. During dinner, Roxanne was even more on the offense. Touching him, whispering to him, he didn't know if she was genuinely interested in him or if she was simply playing. In either case, he tried not to look too awkward in front of the kids, knowing that Eloise's feeling for Roxanne had become more than a simple teacher-student relationship. He bid his time, knowing that the day would eventually end, and by the same means this nightmare. After eating, Roxanne and Steve started a drinking contest. First by playing the old maid game, then by playing Hold'em poker. Eloise and a friend had disappeared into the living room by that point, so he was dealing with the witch on his own. They had taken at least 8 beers each, and he was close to his limit. Shit. What was his usual expression? Does he look natural right now? Is not moving a normal thing? He didn't know. He was completely wasted. The best strategy he could find to make sure Roxanne didn't see through his disguise was not to speak. What if Roxanne is not actually dead? Oh my god. What if she shot him, even though she didn't actually kill her? I don't believe your poker face. You must be at your limit by now. Just give up. Duh. To think she was able to still stand like this. If he weren't so good at poker, he would have already been knocked out at this point. But she was losing almost every single hand and she was still able to speak and even bark for that matter. How frightening. This woman was frightening. In any other circumstances, she would be beating him to a pulp. He thanked God for giving him the opportunity to save face like this. Naturally, she didn't finish the beer in front of her. She collapsed on the table. He was the winner. He could have put his foot on her like a conqueror if he still had the ability to stand up straight. He was glad the girls were watching a movie because it had been 5 minutes since he last moved an inch. So he was waiting for the room to stop spinning before actually getting up. So during those 5 overly long minutes, he was forced to look at Roxanne's face, who was asleep, kinda, on the table. She was not ugly at all. She was almost cute if it weren't for the drool running down her mouth. She was still smiling though. This pissed him off. Then she whispered, yes, she was still alive, surprisingly enough. I think I'm gonna puke. He got up to his feet, slowly making sure not to fall in the process, grabbing and lifting Roxanne with difficulty, and then said vaguely to the 2 girls still sit in the living room, sorry. I'll lie her down for a while. Roxanne mumbled a fighty cry, even though she just said she was going to throw up, and then went limp in his arms. He threw her onto his bed and closed the door behind him. For a time he didn't move. He stayed up on his feet, looking at a point in space, concentrating to lessen the effect of alcohol on his mind. When he felt a bit better, he took another look at Roxanne. He sighed in desperation. She was not moving either. She was lying on her belly in a star shape. To think he will have to take care of that disgrace. He would have thrown her out a long time ago if it were only him. But it wasn't. It's only for tonight, he said to himself, those words multiple times over. It was alright. He only needed to take care of her for an hour or two. Then he would be able to return to his everyday life. She would be gone. Forever, he hoped. He walked straight to her, almost. Turned her on her back and took a better look at her. She was not completely passed out. She opened her eyes a little and said hi, blowing the horrible stench coming out of her mouth towards him. That's when he noticed she was still grabbing at her purse with her left hand. To think she was able to keep it with her in that condition. He tried to take it away, but she was grabbing onto it rather strongly. She finally gave in, though. The fact that she was dead drunk helped quite a bit. You should concentrate on feeling better. Your purse won't run away, don't worry. He threw it near the door, roughly. This was not the FUD, though, was it? He was about to ask her if she needed water or some fresh air, but then something caught his eye, something shiny. Her purse was probably unzipped when he threw it away. Oh, okay. Because some of its content was now lying on the floor. Among all of it was something unexpected. Something familiar. He walked to it slowly, crouched gently, and then seized the familiar object delicately with his thumb and index finger. He remembered it well. It was flashy for a lighter since it was made out of silver. His sister's husband was often playing with it, even when he was not actually using it. It had always annoyed Steve how he brandished the small little thing as if it was his most prized possession. And now this lighter, this worthless piece of junk, was hidden in Roxanne's purse. He could do nothing but laugh at the situation. Is it just me, or you're really stupid? Huh? She made some small noise, but nothing intelligible. To think that the proof he had been searching for was on her person all along. He didn't think she would be stupid enough to walk around with something so incriminating on her. True, this didn't prove she was the killer or anything, but this was big enough proof to link Roxanne to the late Patrick. In other words, this proved the illicit relationship, and this gives her a motive to kill him. Yeah, a motive to kill him, okay. Steve? He was right after all. He wanted to be proven wrong, but he was right. He didn't feel anything right now. He was calm. He had to be. He had promised after all. He had to protect it, his lifestyle, and protect her, Eloise. He needed to take a deep breath. He needed to stay focused, or else... What are you doing? Something touched his shoulder. His elbow moved on its own, quickly, sharply, as would a well-oiled machine. An automatism. He had been taken by surprise, so he had acted. He had attacked. The woman fell on the floor with a big thud. He had knocked her out with a single motion. He had done it instinctively. The lighter in his fingers flew away somewhere. He didn't know where. He was dead surprised by her. Shit! He looked at her. She didn't move, but he could see that she was still breathing. He got on one knee and checked her pulse. It was normal. She might have a concussion, but nothing to worry about. Then why was he still looking at her vital signs? Why were his signs still around his hands still around her neck, searching for a pulse? She had hurt his sister. She was the reason for her depression. She was the source of her sorrow. She had pushed her to her death. He started squeezing. Because of her. She killed her. She laughed at her. She deserves to die. Oh, notice the screen going red. Die, 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 die. His nails were digging inside her neck. She was bleeding. She was suffocating. This was exhilarating. His head was blank. He was excited. He enjoyed this. He couldn't control himself. He was searching for a reason not to, but it was to no avail. She was guilty. She was in front of him, waiting, begging. If he didn't take this opportunity now, then he wouldn't be able to face his sister, his beloved sister. She had given him the world. This was all he could do for her. All he could do. He put strength onto his hold, wanting to crush her windpipe. She was changing color fast. In less than 30 seconds, this would be all over. Thank God it will be over. But then... Ha 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 ha. He let go of the woman instantly. He was shaking, he was scared, he was disgusted. He wanted to throw up, knowing that this is what he would have become. This is not right. While he was attempting to kill their former teacher, Eloise and her friend were giggling in the living room, happily enjoying their night, enjoying this day that was supposed to become a fun memory. How could he? How could he? How could he? He had promised her. He had given her his word. He was supposed to protect his lifestyle. His life with Eloise by his side. He thought he was strong enough. He thought he had finally become strong enough. After all, he had become who he was in order to be so. But that was obviously not the case. His sister was right. He had become weaker. He was weak. He was still shaking. This was not in his persona. Everything he did was out of his normally composed, well-organized character. Hurriedly, fearfully, he looked at Roxanne's pulse, all the while thinking to himself, "Don't be dead, don't be dead, don't be dead." To think he was wishing for her well-being. She was still breathing. She was still unconscious. She was in no danger whatsoever. But this wouldn't have been the case if he hadn't realized what he was doing so quickly. 20, no, 15 more seconds and she'd have died. His heart was aching. His stomach was a mess. He had not the strength to lift his eyes. He could not stand up straight. "I'm sorry, sis, but I can't do this. Not anymore. I found someone that even I can protect. This time." But he understood now. He understood the darkness in his heart. He could no longer avoid this weakness. He had to accept the fact that he was not perfect. He had to accept his feelings, not just those of the people around him. He apologized to Eloise in his head. He would not use violence on Roxanne, not anymore, but she had to suffer the consequences for her actions nonetheless. He won't be satisfied until she had done so. He looked around him, found a dirty sweatshirt lying around, and put it on her. This would hide the marks on her neck, he thought. However, the bruise on her face from his elbow was still very much visible. But it was dark, so it should be fine. Everything should be fine. He waited another 15 minutes until he felt like he could drive safely-ish. Took that opportunity to shove back the things that were on the floor inside her purse. The only thing he couldn't find was the lighter. He would find it later. He lifted Roxanne up, asked Emily if she needed a ride, then proceeded to drive slowly, extremely slowly, towards Emily's house. He was thankful that she lived only a couple of blocks away. He didn't think he would have an accident, but just in case. Since his sister died from a car accident, he had been driving with extreme cautiousness. Until now, that is. After dropping the girl off, he drove back close to his home. He had already found a good place for what he planned to do. He had found it the very first day that he rented the apartment. It was a small, private shelter. Someone else's shelter, obviously. Why people owned shelters around here, Steve had no idea. But shelters were perfect. No one actually looked inside those. They could be left unused and untouched for years. And also, they were soundproof, which was good. That shelter was the kind that had a digital lock on it, and digital locks often have an admin mode, or at the very least a service mode, in order to have privileged access when trying to debug the stupid thing. The thing is, the lock's password is different in that service mode. It's a default password, and most often than not, that default password is quite stupid. He was able to unlock the thing rather easily. He has successfully descended the ladder with the woman on his shoulder, though not without difficulty. He put her in a little room made out of steel that he had already emptied beforehand. He left the 2 bottles of water in a bucket before jamming the door shut with a crowbar. He then went back to his apartment just like that. He didn't have a plan. He wasn't going to use violence on her, but he wanted her to suffer a little nonetheless. A couple of days stuck in that room would do just fine. Then he could confront her, and when that time comes, hopefully, he will learn the truth. When he came back home, all the lights were on. Shit, he had left Eloise all alone. She told him she was scared of being alone. That was careless of him. He heard some noise in the corridor and then nothing. He looked at Eloise's door, but it was closed. He walked towards his room, but lightheadedness came over him all of a sudden. He staggered until he found a wall to lean on. He was way past his limit. Alcohol was still very much in his system. He had simply forgotten about it the moment that the harsh reality showed its ugly head. He finally found the door to his room. He closed the door behind him and collapsed on his bed. He fell asleep right then and there. We might not be able to finish this today, actually. Might have to take a look at streaming tomorrow or something. Or at this point today. The next day was very quiet. Eloise stayed in her room, probably enjoying her last day off before returning to school. The fact that she had not talked or even sent messages to him made him feel a bit disconcerted. Yet he knew that the best way to deal with those kinds of situations was to give her some space. If he had done something wrong, she would eventually tell him. This is how family works, after all. He had yet to check up on Roxanne. Imagining her all scared and agitated in a dark, empty room was something he enjoyed greatly. His feelings had not yet settled. He knew what he was doing was not only wrong, but also paradoxical to his goal of living a normal life. Because with what he was doing, there were some very good chances that Roxanne would go to the police the moment he set her free, and he already decided that if and when the time comes, he would abide by it. He wanted to protect Eloise, but he realized he wouldn't be able to do so if he couldn't even listen to his own feelings. Unless he could face his own demons, he wouldn't be able to evolve. He wouldn't be able to let go of them. But he didn't plan to give up without a fight either. He was not so stupid as to let Eloise and his fate ride on Roxanne's peculiar mood. If she gave up on him, then obviously he would give her up. While she might not be the killer, the fact that the police had no suspect made the situation a bit of a slippery slope. If they knew she had a relationship with the husband, then she might become the primary suspect. Well, for all he knows, he might be the primary suspect. But except for a couple of phone calls, he had seen no trace of police investigation revolving around him. So he was kind of hopeful on that front. In the end, he was confident he could talk Roxanne out of it if it came down to it. He read the whole day on his couch, not minding the fact that he could no longer find Patrick's lighter anywhere in his room. Well. We're gonna try to finish his perspective and then we'll end for today. And I'm gonna do another out of schedule stream today, this Thursday. Monday came. He desperately continued his search for a job, since none of the places he had applied to ever called him back. He had done so until Eloise's school was over. He still had dirty money, but relying too much on it would surely come to bite him in the ass later on. So he was very much in need of a job, and fast. During the ride home, after picking her up, Eloise started saying peculiar things. She asked him about her house, that house, then she even spoke about Roxanne, about the fact that she didn't come to school today, about the fact that he didn't care about her. He said he would go check up on her later, and he would. He would, yes! He had played with fire for long enough. She couldn't miss work for another day or else people would start noticing her disappearance. 2 days were enough anyway. He wanted to scare her a little, and he had probably succeeded on that front. But if he started waiting for too long, this could turn into something ugly. He ate dinner with Eloise, wasted some more time reading, and then went on his way. Shelter had obviously not changed since the last time he came. He had no fear that it would. He unstuck the door by removing the crowbar, opening it with one swift movement. He didn't think she would try to attack him, but just in case he had the crowbar ready in his hand. But no, she was sleeping on the floor looking like a mess. But she looked like a mess 2 days ago, so that didn't change much. She had drunk most of the water, but there was still half a bottle left. She was not as stupid as she looked. He threw the crowbar behind him, making as much noise as he possibly could. She woke up in fear. When their eyes met, she was even more frightened. She tried to get up on her feet, but she was staggering weakly. She still tried the best she could to further the distance between them, but her back hit a wall rather quickly. Is it Thursday for you? Yeah, it is already. It's like midnight. He closed the door behind him silently. He didn't try to reassure her. He didn't want to. Not yet. She started by asking him the usual, "What do you want from me? And why are you doing this?" He didn't answer. Instead, he said, "I know you were fooling around with Patrick." Her mouth opened slightly, but then closed as quickly. She looked away. She didn't have the strength to lie. Or maybe she didn't want to. "Tell me, are you the one who killed them?" He got out of the shelter mechanically, walked to his car emotionlessly, and drove away with a strong feeling of emptiness. He didn't think. He didn't move more than necessary. He felt heavy, but that was the only thing he felt. This time, he really didn't feel anything. It was as if he had a big hole in his stomach that needed to be filled, but never would be. He had lost something, but he didn't know why. No, maybe that's because he now knows, that he now feels this way. He opened the door to his apartment sluggishly and reached for the light switch, but then... "Don't open it," Eloise said to him alarmingly. He did as she asked without asking any questions. He noticed it instantly. She was a bright girl, turning off all the lights like that. If only she had hidden the gun behind her back, he wouldn't have had a glimpse of it while the door behind him was still open and light still seeped through the apartment. He closed the door calmly and stated the obvious. "You should turn the safety off before using that thing." The safety? On the left side, there's a switch on top of the handle. Push it up. He started wondering what he had done wrong. He didn't believe she was the type to do something like this. It was probably a misunderstanding. But then again, she had every right to do so if she really wanted to. He was a liar, a murderer, and he had almost killed a 5th grade teacher. He had abandoned her mother at the moment where she needed him the most. He might even have hurt Eloise without noticing it. That was the kind of man he was. As long as he could witness what she had decided to become, he would accept his fate. She didn't have to be perfect, she didn't have to be special, she only needed to be. Why? Why? Why what? He wanted to know the reason too. What did he do to her? Why are you like this? As if you don't care, you never care. I care. I always cared. More than anyone I care. Why has it been so hard for him to say this? Should have said it a long time ago. He has to say it now, he has to, but... It's too late. Way too late. She didn't give him the chance to. Say, are you really a killer? Someone who kills for money? How do you know about that? How does she know about that? He thought he had hidden that fact pretty well. There shouldn't be any evidence of such a thing in this place. Shit. As always, he was too honest. She pointed a gun at him with a pained expression. She trembled ever so slightly. You, why don't you even try to hide it? She was shouting at him, but he didn't care. Right now, he was still trying to figure out how she knew he was a hitman. Who told you this? This was the only explanation. Someone told her. The police, maybe? One of his relatives, perhaps? Or... Why does it even matter? Did you kill Roxanne, then? Is that why you have so many pictures of her? You've seen those. Wait a minute. Don't tell me. No, don't. You. This is bad. This is really bad. Actually called him? She called him. She saw his phone and she called him. That man, that monster. Mark. Him? You mean the man in your phone? What did you say to him? Maybe it was still alright. He still doesn't know where they are. Steve could still salvage this. They can still run. It doesn't matter. Yes, it does. He would come and kill them both if he knew where they were. Steve didn't even remember how many times he had to do this. Kill the traitor, kill his family, make a point out of it. This had always made him sick to his stomach. He tried to reach out for her instinctively, but to take her in his arms and get away from her as fast as he possibly could. That's how scared he was of him. But she? Stay away! She shouted with all her might. That voice froze him in place. That pleading, desperate voice. She was scared of him. She didn't trust him. She was in pain. He was the one doing her harm. Stay away. He finally realized just how agitated he was, how scary he looked. She started crying as he had never seen her cry before. She was devastated, and all of this because of him. He could do nothing but look at her, overwhelmed by his own powerlessness. Did you kill them? She asked between her sobs. Who? Who is she talking about? Sure, he had killed people, but my parents. Did you kill them? No, He answered without thinking. He answered truthfully like he always did. But was that really the right thing to do? Liar! Liar! What about the lighter then? And the pictures on your phone? You're clearly hiding something. The lighter. She had found the lighter. How could he not notice this? No, it's a misunderstanding. It was a misunderstanding. He wanted it to be a misunderstanding. He could still explain himself. He was sure she would understand. He was sure that everything would be alright. Until she asked that question. Then who did it then? And why did they die? If it's not you, then who? Who did it? And why? Was he supposed to explain to her that her dad was cheating on her mom? That they both had trouble understanding each other and that their marriage was a complete lie? That she was depressed and he was lost? That Roxanne was the woman with whom her dad was sleeping with? I want my parents back! Was he supposed to take her parents away from her? The image she had created of them would shatter in an instant if he told her the truth. Would she even accept it? I know you know what happened, so tell me, who did it? Was he supposed to tell her that? No. Of course, he couldn't. That's the only thing he couldn't do. She has the right to be happy, right? She's been struggling all this time for happiness. She had finally accepted the harsh reality. That tragedy was now behind her. What would happen if he told her? She would be broken. He had seen her. If anything, he had only looked at her, how strong she was, how brave she's become, how beautiful her smile was, even in moments of tribulation. She was the purest thing he had ever laid his eyes on in this world. He wanted to protect his purity, but unfortunately, he'd failed. Everything would have been better for her if she hadn't lived with him. By trying to be strong, by being the weak man he was, he had brought misfortune upon her, and danger. This had to stop. He couldn't possibly think running away would work anyway. She has a life here, and friends, and love. He was resolute. He looked her in the eyes, rather. He had calmed himself down. He wanted to be himself, if only in front of her. He had found his answer. If he plays the role of the bad guy, if he dies here, then everything would be alright. She would call the cops, tell them everything she knew, they would hopefully be satisfied with it, and Mark would let go of his vengeance the moment he'd make sure of Steve's death and saw that the police were keeping an eye on the girl. Sorry sis, in the end I couldn't do it. I couldn't protect her in your stead. How stupid we are. You're right, I did. He finally told her what she wanted to hear. Her eyes went wide. He saw the moment her heart broke, the moment her innocence shattered, and he regretted his choice instantly. He heard the dry sound of the suppressor, then felt a light burning pinch around the area of his stomach. He unconsciously looked down. He was bleeding. His feet were giving way. He slowly fell onto one knee. His consciousness was fading, gradually. And we're gonna see Roxanne's perspective and conclude the story. Beautiful, wonderful, amazing. Tomorrow, okay? I'm gonna do an out of schedule stream. I hope all the people that are invested in this game can be here tomorrow. It's gonna be at the same time as usual. So the 20th of April, Thursday, at 10 p.m. Central European Summertime. Okay? I'm gonna enter YouTube recording here. Otherwise, you're just gonna have to wait for me to upload this to YouTube, which should be soonish. Bye, YouTube.